live.
Hell yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Grandpa
we're
Owen is
live.
trying to figure out how to order takeaway
How
on his
does the
phone.
internet
So
work?
I will be running the stream from now on.
Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. Hello, Owen. Welcome to
Hello,
the.
Prince. Thanks for having me on the channel.
Thank you. No problem. So this is the
As if Prince could
14th
have a
time.
channel. As if Prince would be allowed a channel.
Maybe on
yeah.
BitChute. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. On
Yeah.
VK, you're the only person allowed to stream on like
On
Billy or
Kick.
VK or something.
Yeah. Some sort of a shadowy Rumble. I'll go to Rumble.
Yeah.
No.
The fact that Rumble was just people who are like, man, we've been cancelled. Now our audience of 100 people is going to come and watch us on Rumble.
Well, and many bots. Yeah, no. But this is our 14th stream together, or something like that, or even more.
It's our 21st. It's our 21st.
21st. Okay. Well, a day to be celebrated.
Yeah.
All right then.
Yeah, I was going to say
What's on the
last
agenda
time was
today,
our
Owen?
20th. Today, I think we briefly said we'd catch up on books, but we're going to be talking mostly about our campaigns because it is probably pushing a year since we last did, or just under or over that since we last did a campaign catch up.
Sure.
And we have a selection of questions from the audience as well. Some of them related to campaigns or kind of stuff we've been doing. But yeah, I should say a difference between this time and last time is that last time your campaign was you'd run an extended playtest. This time you have actually been running a campaign, haven't you? So I guess that will be it'll be a different kind of You've been running an ongoing game.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've been sort of grinding my AD&D, my open table AD&D game every week on Wednesday evening for pretty long now. Shit, I may have been at it for it's more than a year because I remember getting at some point one of my players he'd been playing for quite a while, and then at some point because of scheduling he moved out, but like his last action was like to give me a wedding gift, which was really nice. I hadn't expected that, but that was a year ago.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or
almost a year ago, I should say. Yeah,
almost
but it's a year ago.
Almost
yeah,
a year. Sure. It was August, wasn't it? August. It was your anniversary.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
It is 10 episodes, 11 months since the last campaign catch up, which was the 29th of July, 2024. It was literally a year ago. It was literally a year ago that we did a campaign catch up.
There we go. Yeah, no,
wonderful.
wonderful.
That's kind of symmetrical. That's fun. Yes. Sure. So reading wise, I was just going to say I have been. I've got back to finishing Chrétien de Troyes, Arthurian romances. I'm currently because I had the Grail, Percival and the Grail, to go. So I've been reading that, and I started a Eudora. This is very deep cut. I started a Eudora Welty novel called Delta Wedding. I
literally have no idea what you're talking. Eudora Welting.
Eudora Welting.
Wondershire Mouse. A little local Welsh author.
She's from Mississippi. She's from Mississippi. Southern writer. Kind of post World War One through to the 90s, I guess. Or 80s or something like that. Southern writer in that same kind of generation as Robert Penn Warren and Alan Tate. Actually, Alan Tate's book here.
Andrew Tate, writes exclusively about her culinary experiences as a shepherd's pie gourmet. Yes.
Very witty. Gourmand, I believe is the word. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The gourmet is the food. She is a shepherd's pie. They're putting me into a shepherd's pie.
All right. Very nice. Good. Yeah. Smooth. Subtle transition. Good bridge.
Yeah. Mostly Arthurian romances, as I say. What about you? What have you been reading?
Well, I'd actually like to talk about my campaign for a little bit before we slip inevitably into book talk. I'd like to talk about AD&D, man.
Every episode should be just book talk. Like, it's a D&D stream. Yeah.
It's a D&D stream. Well, that was our warm-up topic. Wedge Antilles. And how he runs Rogue Squadron.
Our warm-up topic was books. Yeah. Which Rogue Squadron books have you read lately, Prince?
Shit, I have been again distracting me from AD&D. Very subtle. You're a cunning opponent. No, actually, I have been. I've also been reading serious novels. So I'm still on Thomas Aquinas' selected writings. And I just finished Xi Jinliu's Three-Body Problem. But in between, I've been reading Star Wars novels. I've been.
I was going to say it's a palate cleanser. Yeah, good palette. I find the same with Terry Pratchett. I just reread Pyramids by Pratchett, and that's like it's clever, it's funny, but also it's like it takes 2 days, and it just kind of cleans your brain.
I mean, probably, and I had this. There's a reason I stopped reading like Warhammer novels after a while, and after a while, it's like after 100 of them. It's not that they're all the same. That's fine. But at some point, I kind of figured out that you can get the sort of like the same thrill or the same thing that you're looking for in those books. You can find those in like a purer, more platonic form, usually earlier. And with Star Wars novels, if they're well written, right, then they tap into the sort of like that Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers style space operatic feel of like the early 30s and 50s. And you could probably find better, even more space opera-ish examples in, like, say, E.E. Doc Smith's Lensman or something, which I've also read. But yeah,
Lee Brackett,
Lee Brackett, more Sword and Planet, but also very good. Let me, I might reread that. But occasionally just these sort of like simple, fast-paced tales of like adventure with personal drama and like large stakes. And you have a soaring sense of adventure. You can hop on your ship and you fly all the way across the galaxy. Yeah, that's nice. It's cool.
Oh, on which note, one of my current side campaigns is Traveller.
Oh no!
Talk about transition.
Oh yes. You see, I recall a lot of discussion on the pedantic server about Traveller not existing or not being real.
No one has ever played Traveller. No one has ever played Traveller.
Okay, it's impossible.
Do I need to say anything else? It's impossible. You're actually arrested. You're arrested by Sir Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of His Majesty's
Okay, after the new legislation. All right. What happened before that? What happened if you tried
before then? No, Traveller is good. Traveller is CAG. It is classic. It's kind of weird. It's a very different game to D&D, whilst also having an often quite similar vibe. Like, it's a game that you do not have to play tons of or get to high levels to understand. It's in that sense, because you don't level. The thing that you gain, the natural cycle is gaining money and treasure. Treasure matters, money matters. So you can buy other stuff. So you can have bigger ships. So you can do different things. So you can travel. So in that sense, that is I think it is a weaker campaign incentive. It's why it even more quickly than D&D was affected by story game kind of linear let's call it track gaming, linear kind of storytelling. But it's not actually organically that. It is organically player driven, world first. There's loads of rules for generating a world completely separate to the player that you can just play as a mini game. And it's challenge oriented. There are things like, how do you solve this? The mission we've been doing is Mission to Mithril as a bit of a starter, and I think we'll head on to like a proper campaign after. The Mission to Mithril is you have this cool geodesic map, and you have to travel in an ATV across the ice to 3 different locations, basically to pay off the fact that the guy at the planet's governor, he's actually just the scientist in control of it, will fix your ship. So it's a good campaign starter. And it's something where you can go in any direction. There are procedures for everything about getting around the planet. You need food, you need to monitor fuel. This particular mission actually has a strong board gamey feel because of that kind of logistics. Is really heavy on it.
I imagine you don't have you can't take a shuttle or something you got to take a snowmobile.
Well, yes, there are such things as air rafts, so you can technically fly, but yes, your ship doesn't have one, and he doesn't have one. He does have an ATV.
Oh, so that's a starting adventure also. You don't have the
it's a starting yet. The idea is that your scout ship has broken in this system and you have to land. It's a funny one because it's very much like Traveller definitely feels like it has so many different modes. There's one famous campaign which I've reviewed recently on the channel. I haven't played it, but I reviewed it because I'd read it and I was like, this is interesting. It's basically Dune but on a water planet, and that's kind of really good and organically Traveller themed. But also you don't fly a ship around space. So I know one of my players was like, oh, that seems like a shame because it feels like Traveller should be space opera-y and sci-fi-y, in terms of that kind of sci-fi exploration game rather than. But of course, all these things are in the genre, the mechanics are simple. They're different. They are less symmetric even than D&D in some ways. Different skills work differently. but you're not often pushed outside of combat into like, oh, you just have to roll loads of skill checks. There are some skill checks. In that sense, it's maybe less player skill oriented at points, but it's very much world first. It's very much like you make a character very quickly in under 10 minutes. And I think all of that works well. And I've been enjoying it, and look forward to playing more of it. It's no harder than AD&D. In fact, it's probably easier, I would say.
I remember playing like Swords Without Number. No, sorry, that's Stars Without Number. Whoops, it's not Swords.
Worlds.
No, Stars Without Number. The Kevin Crawford powered BX version of Traveler.
Yes, the BX Traveler. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was pretty good. Like our DM ran that for us for like probably 2.5 years, and we got pretty far. But there also the appeal of like, I feel having spaceships with different types of engines is like a very natural way to handle progression. Because if you would have a slow ship, you probably can't even explore the entire sector, let alone go to different sectors. You would just never get there, or it would be too fucking slow.
Oh yeah. So if you jump, basically, yeah, it's that jump one means you have to always be going to adjacent systems with a planet, because a gas giant,
you can get caught on a little star island even. Yeah, if all the hexes are not connected, you got like a little cluster you can run.
Yeah, so yeah, you need, so jump one is quite limiting because you have to kind of jump around quite slowly to different systems and go and refuel. Yeah. Swords Without Number, it has 5 swords. Yeah, 5 swords, I believe, in the Swords Without Number.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. Jump two, you can go to non-adjacent hexes, and I think when you realize the potential scope and the kinds of campaigns you can play, like a really popular, it's a Mongoose Traveler campaign, but it might be one we play, I don't know. It's called Swords of Pirates of Drinax, and the idea is you are privateers working to restore space Byzantium. Like this decayed empire is like, hey, do you want to be our privateers? And you're like, yeah, what an epic, cool, kind of open-ended, player-driven sandbox that is, where you start small and you have to get bigger. The same with this kind of, lots of the other ones is kind of similar, where you're like, oh, you're kind of just running a merchant ship, but then you get caught up in espionage and a trade war, and things like that, and that's common in terms of the campaigns that are more open are often like that, and that zero to hero thing can happen. And yeah, exactly, ship seems like the most, because equipment wise it's like, well, I've got slightly better armor or slightly better weapons, but it's the ships or maybe the followers, the kind of retainers, do you have more guys fighting for you?
I don't know how Traveler works, right? But in Swords Without there I go again.
Yeah.
Stars Without Number. So you would occasionally have with equipment, you could have very uneven situations where, for example, like power armor, which I think was powered armor was like tech level 4 stuff, would make you immune to all like sort of like hand weapons from tech level 3 or below. So you could go there, you could go to some primitive planet without space travel, and you can set yourself up as a sort of like king, right? And you could buy
it's not quite
drugs
extreme
that you could use to make the whole population dependent, and they would die if they were depleted. So like that sort of imbalance is also existed.
You can do that. So I say it's not quite so extreme in terms of like flat rules like that, but there are things like, the relevant thing is to say a vacuum suit, so a spacesuit, an advanced spacesuit, is Tech 8 in Traveler. Combat armor is like Space Marine armor, and battle dress is even better than that, and they're 11 and 13. Now, like, what is it? A dagger versus combat armor needing an 8+ basic is at -7 to start with. So you have to have a lot of bonuses to even have a chance on 2d6. So functionally, it's impossible. Attacking someone with combat armor using a dagger, you've got to both be at range and have an enormously high bonus to even stand a chance. So most people just won't be able to do it. So yeah, there's a similar thing. The combat rules are fun. I like the combat in it, and I like the fact it does kind of lend itself to kind of more. I'm trying to think of wargaming scenarios, like Mission to Mythril definitely has that. And but it's a really flexible thing. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I mean, we'll have to play it sometime too. But like,
yeah,
I'll be happy to run it for you.
I don't know if Traveler has much in the ways of psionics. I do remember that Stars Without Number got pretty crazy at some point when you had psychics with the teleportation ability, for example. This became it was like some cross between what's the like between the fucking X-Men and like what's the best and like Delta Force or something. Delta Force operators, basically. That's kind of like how you would play. You could do these covert ops, infiltration stuff, but then
so
like, with psychic powers, it's like crazy.
So psionics are rare and difficult and expensive, but certainly something in the game, and they're in Starter Traveler. So yeah, like they're a thing. And I also that the way that aliens are dealt with is kind of interesting too, because the idea is they each have their own character generation system, which at its basic level looks like the normal Imperium human one. But even other human species have that. And some have higher chances of.
Is it racist class essentially, or do you don't have class?
Sort of. It's more advanced than that even. I actually did, my alien books are over there. I only have Starter next to me, but it's that what I will very quickly physically throw up on screen, show on screen is you got character generation here, and you kind of go down the checklist. You go over these 2 pages and you create your character. Quite easy.
Oh, okay.
Quite quick.
Yeah,
under
it's
10
pretty
minutes.
involved.
Under 10 minutes. Yeah, well, but it's under 10 minutes. It's more that you are given a very clear system. Now,
you roll a handful of color-coded dice and you're off. All right, gotcha.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. And there are 6 professions available to basic Imperium humans. The Imperium is the main human power.
Oh, and is it true that you could die during character creation?
Yeah. Yes, you can. Yes, there is a survival role. It's there is by the way a bureaucrat a career in one of the supplements, which is really hard to leave. Really easy to survive, but virtually like really hard to leave.
Nice.
And they keep trying to
social commentary.
And you can end up like losing strength and stuff because you're getting weak being at your desk. But yeah, so yeah, it's quite quick, quite easy. And in the Imperium, you can join the Navy, the Marines, the Army, the Scouts, merchants, or like the Merchant Navy, or other like rogues, drifters. Now, if you're playing a different human race or an actual alien race, like a xenomorph, an actual Xenos, then they have different professions with different rules.
In Traveler, right? So
they are optional. They are not in the core. You are an Imperium human. And so in that sense, it is racist class in one way, but it's more diagonal. It's diagonal to that. Like, oh yeah, you just use a different set of charts to roll up your potential character, and they have different classes depending on the race. And that's it. And the same with the other humans. So if you're a Terran human, if you're Solomani, from Sol, then you have different careers as well, because you wouldn't quite have the same system as the Imperium does, is the idea. So yeah, it's nice. It's very efficient in terms of its world building, in terms of its implied world building. It has basically good mechanics. They are fairly light and streamlined in the same way that people don't, apart from with a few exceptions, people don't realize this is true of AD&D. It's similar where you're like, actually, it's not that hard once you've read them and once you've grokked them and played them. And it's very open to player choice. It just depends on, much like AD&D, it depends on the scenarios you play. The one weakness, if you want to put it that way in character terms, for classic Traveler, and I don't want to put it, maybe that's too harsh, but you'll understand what I mean, is that XP, Treasurer's XP is such a strong virtuous cycle engine for a game. In terms of player-driven, outcome neutral, that kind of thing.
You're kind of talking about sort of the privation of Traveler, of it not having, not really having any sort of advancement like that.
The advancement,
purely equipment based.
Yeah, well, there is a very limited amount of. It's so minor. It's not even in Starter Traveler. I've got it in my other book, the Traveler book, but which is just at the start of play, you can pay to train in 2 skills, and that takes 2 years. So functionally, for a long time in the game, you just have bonuses to 2 skills that you've picked, and eventually you can get those permanently. But you're like, yeah, that could happen over a long campaign that you get more than these 2 skills buffed. But functionally, all that's happening is you pay some money to start training and get buffs.
So it's like very, and it's also very minor compared to like differences you would get in
leveling
equipment or something.
Yeah. Indeed, the equipment is going to generally matter a lot more because you're like, now I've now got combat armor, and I've got a laser rifle, and I've got a battleship, and I've got a mercenary brigade that kind of we drop onto enemy planets in this. Whereas compared to like I increased my sword by 1 is not that much, is it? It's not that. It's going to matter more at lower levels of play than at higher levels of play as well in terms of.
Do you think
scale?
Do you think Traveler is the ultimate space game, or is it true that, as Alexander Macros alleges, that the perfect space game has yet to be born?
Is this Macros saying that he's going to come up with the true traveler? We'll call it.
I forget. This is very embarrassing because I could look it up, but I forget the Aeon Star. I believe they plan to call it. So this is something that has been discussed that they might want to do. I don't know why you wouldn't call it Galax, right? But they're considering some sort of space opera game. But it's kind of interesting to discuss, like, well, what's the is this the, like, AD&D to me at least is like the ultimate fantasy adventure game, right?
I agree.
So,
I agree. In terms of everything we have, nothing is ever better.
Game.
Well, it's still partly a question of what your objective is, and I say that having played a lot of Star Wars D6, I'm really enjoying that. But Star Wars D6 is not secretly a CAG, right? It can be very slightly pushed that way. You can give players agency, but it's not really the same kind of thing.
Star Wars, I would imagine, would always be like sort of at least semi-linear. You don't have to run it completely as a railroad, but wanting to do like space opera with these major stakes.
The sense that there's always going to be this big stuff you have to think about and focus on. Exactly. And it's also that it doesn't, as a game, contain the tools and the infrastructure to kind of create this, an emergent world. That's not the kind of game it is.
In science fiction is even more important, by the way, because of the insane freedom you would have, like having a ship is crazy.
This game
fly around.
Which this game does, to be clear. Traveler is all about that. That's where Worlds Without Number, Stars Without Number, etc. get that idea.
Worlds Without Number is not that is a fantasy game set in a sort of.
Is that fantasy?
Earth.
Sorry.
Yes.
It's dying Earth, is it? So Stars Without Number is one. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for the correction. But that's where that gets the idea of all the tables. Is very much the idea of like, let's generate a star system. And I assume Macros must like that about Traveler. In terms of I'd say basically it's, and I don't mind the idea that technology more than character advancement is where, because that's a bit like how magic items are such a big thing in AD&D. That's actually fine. I think it's something where, and I don't mind the lack of advancement. I actually think that's kind of interesting, because how much better are you going to get as a human? What I think is, it maybe, as I say, it's more about how a player's motivated to decide things and want to do stuff. Gold for XP is incredibly good at that, and Traveler doesn't have that.
But like if you lock large parts of the game world kind of behind, you sort of soft lock them, where maybe they could grub together like a lot of their money to get a transport every once in a while, but then you're adventurers and you're taking the bus to a different sector. That's humiliating. You want your ship, and at some point there's
you
going to be
the space equivalent of bus wankers.
Yeah, right. Just a bunch of like heavily armed hobos, just making the space bus again, are we?
I think that happens in London, doesn't it? Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Oh dear. No. Okay. Well, I don't want to I don't want to offend I don't know what the new law says. So no.
Right. Sorry, there's a knock on the door. Let me just
go. Say is, at some point you would have like, and then you'd have regions where, like, say, maybe there's no civilization that you can like kind of like explore, and maybe there's lost technologies to find. So I think you could probably do the same sort of upward progress kind of
definitely
method with just equipment, but it would be it wouldn't be as easy, but you can still do it easy.
And some of it also because of the fact that one form of playing it, I guess, it's also if you play if you lean heavily into the war game side of it. So if you play a $1 trillion credit squadron kind of game, if you play the book form Mercenary has a whole thing about how to create your own mercenary unit. Hammer's Slammers, the adaptation for that but Mongoose Traveler. Mongoose Traveler is the adaptation for that. So if you want to do that,
that Kevin Crawford at least imported the idea of the grav tank into the Hammer Slammers inspired TL5 Graph tank into Stars Without Number.
So the point is, in terms of the if you want to do it at that level, if like we want to run a mercenary company, then that is something Traveller can do, and there it's going to be much more of a board game, war game with different kind of elements to it, isn't it? You're going to be pushing much more in that direction, and there are extra rules you can get for that. If you're doing a space opera kind of thing, it's going to be use that emergent engine, but with something where probably you're like, oh yeah, there's a whole sector to explore, but we're looking for the clues as well. You know, like we're looking for the clues of the ancients or whatever, and that's kind of viable. You know, that's a natural incentive, but it's very much enclosed, isn't it, down to that story. So I think it depends how you design the campaign. Maybe that's what I'd say. In Traveller, I suspect, without being an expert at all, being very much an amateur, it depends how you design the campaign more than in AD&D, where the natural assumptions are so strong that they incentivize behavior.
Yeah, with Stars Without Number, or even hearing about Traveller, reading a little bit about it, I always get this sort of this vibe of like dingy spaceports, backwater deals, and like, hey, you got the stuff, and some shady guys asking you to carry some container of like medical supplies to some interdicted planet. Just don't open it.
Space Singapore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't worry about it. Sorry, it's very perishable. Don't open it. The stasis field is like it's very unstable, right?
Yeah.
That sort of those sorts of hijinks, right?
Yeah. No, I think so. I think there's all kinds of games you can do with it. Tell us about as we said, you have an ongoing campaign which started, I guess, around the time we last talked about this. I think in retrospect, it may literally just have started like you'd played like a couple of sessions or something.
It kept going. I do it fairly low intensity, so I'm not fully what do you call that? I've not fully absorbed the CAG ethos, so I do not have a giant hex map. It's mostly in my head, and it started as a series of like sort of disjointed modules. I've since created a sort of like hub area, the free sort of like city of Graven's Crossing on the borders of like an empire, very similar to the empire I sort of had in my mind during my my B2 campaign. And yeah, like it functions as a sort of hub. I play weekly. We don't really use one-on-one time, but we use whatever one-on-week time. Like basically every session, more or less, a week passes. So you keep track of time. You have living costs and training costs to kind of like push the players along. There's recurring NPCs in the form of like trainers, and there's different adventure locations that they can kind of like explore, and they've gone through quite a few, and it just gives me an opportunity to run a lot of the adventures that I've been reviewing for years. So for me, it's like I'm not even sure that if you would just do it like that to begin with, if you would necessarily save time. But since I've already read those things, and I go through adventures regularly just from reviewing, I already have so much stuff at my disposal, so I can just like throw that in there. And but like while we're at it, you also get to really fully explore the possibilities of advanced Dungeons and Dragons, all these different rules, or they come up, these interactions with abilities. You have to make calls. They encounter new monsters. You have to figure out, okay, how does that work?
One thing is one thing that will never be replaced by even running some. I mean, you'll get some of this experience by playing, extended one shot. Like we did a 4-shot, and that was great. You will get experience doing other ways, but nothing will test both the game and make you understand the game as well as, or give you the opportunity to do stuff in the game and explore as actually running a campaign. Because then you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm rolling on the encounter tables. What is this monster? I've never run this monster before. That's an example, by the way, but. The idea that you're so regularly coming up with different situations or fringe cases or things where they're like, it wouldn't happen at low level, but we need a sage, or how do we get this item? Is there a legendary swordsmith who can take the mithril we found and turn it into magical armor?
That is kind of like I suspected my sort of the shortcuts that I'm taking now will require more work in the future. Because I feel that like as soon as you unlock enough gold to kind of like seriously query sages that kind of gives the players the ability to proactively learn about the world instead of like reactively waiting for me to like throw scraps at them, right, or gather rumors or something like that. It's very expensive, but it's fine, right? They're not quite there
I
yet.
think
They're
so.
like level 6, for like 4 to 6 approximately, but they're definitely getting there. So then I'll have to like codify and work things out.
Yeah, well, no, and to some degree, though, there can be a degree of like, oh well, you'll suffer later if you don't prep earlier. There's also such a thing, real life is a real thing, and it's sometimes it's better to just get going. Do you know what is better than having a perfectly planned campaign that never starts? Is having an imperfectly planned campaign that does
right,
start.
yeah. Something you just gotta play. Now, of course, and with an open table game, I kind of like say beforehand that like, all right, it's going to be a little bit more casual, but it's totally fine. It works like a charm.
It's also those games settle a bit, don't they? They're open table games settle into. There are usually I have an open table game,
you get
which
regulars,
I need to do which I need to do an update on, actually, because I do one every 20 sessions or so on the on this channel. But
actually,
in that
our
one,
very own Commodore is a player in the
in your game,
annual,
yes.
Oh, sorry, not annual, weekly AD&D game.
Annual game, but no, exactly. You end up having regulars, and so it's not that it's not open table. With the open table, it's more that I'm like, I have a large pool of players, and there'll be a bit less kind of intensity over. There's lower expectation on the players to some degree. It's a bit of a whoever turns up will do whatever we can with. But like, you do get regulars, and you do get people who are like, yeah, this is my campaign. And that campaign is now 81 sessions deep. I think it's 3 years old, something like that.
Oh wow,
playing
nice.
fortnightly. And a fun thing is I do have one of my players who is often my ADM. He plays in other games of mine as well, but he has been running a short run game. It'll probably end up being 3 sessions. So I've been playing in that, actually, which is nice. But that's been fun to kind of be like, in a very small way, share the world and be like, oh yeah, come and be a co-DM. It's not co-DMing in a kind of in the Gygax Kuntsian sense, but it is that sort of thing. Like, oh yeah, run an adventure. It's part of the same continuity. Characters can go over to it from who already,
for sure.
And
I imagine it's even easier if you already have like a sort of dedicated area with some details filled in that are already like fixed, and adventure locations and stuff. Then it's like even better. And then even if the other guy wants to do something, he would just briefly check, oh hey, can I put this here? Yeah, it's okay, of course. But
oh yeah, we had a brief conversation when I was like, oh, just practically, you probably want it to be close to the campaign hub. Well, the main campaign hub. It's a thing though. One thing I find, and I don't know if this is a wide experience or if this is just some, a result of my preferences or how I run the game, but many of my long-lasting campaigns have begun to end up with like multiple hubs. It becomes natural as you explore a world that, and I'm thinking about the practicalities of time and travel. If you've traveled hundreds of miles to go somewhere, if you're like, oh, on the map, let's go and do this, then you end up more naturally having some PCs there. And this is one thing about stable play. By the way, Traveller, definitely, there's an obvious strength to stable play and Traveller.
Troop play, I believe it was later called.
Troop play. But because you are much more likely to have characters who are much more specialised at a job that is good on a ship but not good on the ground, that kind of thing. But yeah, in D&D, the same thing happens, but for a different reason. And one of the reasons it happens is due to geographic separation, the need to, and the fact you might have different threads you want to pull at. One thing I, as a DM, definitely like doing and see as part of not my job, but as part of what I do as a DM, is I'm like, look, all this stuff is in the world. This is fun. The world is full of possibility. Go and decide what you want to do. Now, if there's a bad guy and you don't stop the bad guy, it might be that has bad, there can be timed consequence. But in general, look, it's a world of possibility. Go and pick the stuff you want to do, enjoy it. And that means that players have a high degree of agency at that level of picking their danger, of picking their threat level. And that works quite well, I find. But that also does privilege or press toward stable play. Sorry, go for it.
Well, what we would have a lot is if people are injured, they're out for a week, right? And then if you put at least, and if you put training costs in there as well, right? You're also trained for a week or more. I don't really use the lower grade so much because I think it's already quite stringent, the amount of like gold you're expected to pay for training costs. But
I agree.
But so you sort of have natural downtime and also a natural progression of time. So that all works pretty well. Choosing different levels of risk, I've also kind of, I guess, abstracted that a little bit, where I give people the um, option of like, if you spend a whole week sort of gathering rumors, and you have a percentage chance of like finding a new adventure location, essentially. And usually, not always, but usually there's an option of like, uh, if you can make training costs, you can train for like a service. But I translate that as usually you get some sort of imposed side quest or imposed quest. Not necessarily the most.
That's perfectly traditional. So, and that gives different avenues of doing stuff. No, as I say, it's something. It's probably most obvious actually in the open table game, which is what I have been speaking about. It's a good example in terms of the games I regularly run. That one has on the Discord there's a jobs maps and rumors forum, and the jobs, and each season. So in game we're like it's like 3 years IRL, 1 year, or like 9 months in game. Like it's not one time, but the time passes rapidly at points due to training. So you rapidly go like, oh yeah, that's taken multiple weeks, potentially more, 2 weeks or more if you fail your training check, that kind of thing, and costs more money and stuff. But then seasonally there are new rumors, and the rumors and jobs and stuff there's now 2 regions where there's rumors for, because they're kind of geographically separated. And that stuff is either stuff from modules or stuff I've written, and I put that stuff in. I'll be like, okay, this is what I'm choosing to put in, and the players will be like, oh well, should we this week, because we have these players available with these characters, because this is who's available on the calendar, what should we do? And do we have the people to deal with that, because I think there might be undead there, do we have a cleric? That kind of conversation comes up. And so that's the way that it works in that one. And it's less formal elsewhere. In my longest running campaign, which is coming up to its seventh IRL year birthday, it'll be 7 very soon. In that one, there's no central list, but there's just the players have lots of notes and journals, and they have groups all over the world, like PC groups all over the world, and stuff like that. They've had to overwinter and do stay in a city over it. If they're in the equator, they don't have to do that, but in the farther north areas, they do have to do that kind of thing. So like the way that time and the history of the campaign and all the things the players have found out, the way all that interacts means the players just naturally start making choices because they have the information.
Yeah, I mean, the more you flesh it out, the more it's worthwhile playing with those sorts of concepts, and the more it starts to sort of like live in your head, become a real place for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think it's naturally a progression with that long campaign, which I hadn't actually really given a catch up on either of those other than these procedures. With the long campaign, the way it started was it was based on Tomb of Annihilation by Wizards of the Coast.
Kitty and Island Adventure.
It's based on the My Little Pony RPG.
The My Little Pony franchise, but it's like an X-rated version of My Little Pony. Yeah,
I have sold the MLP RPG when I managed a game shop. I did. I'm trying Tales of It's like Tales of Horsey.
Equestria. You're thinking of something like that.
Tales of Equestria. Yeah, Tales of Equestria. But yeah, it was the rumor table after Tomb of Annihilation was like, oh yeah, these are job, and I think it was one was I just gave them a couple. I think I was like, oh yeah, this guy will give you a ship if you go and map out these 2 locations in the jungle, and I think I gave them one other rumor. And they just started doing that. They're like, oh, okay, can we buy a normal boat then, like just a rowboat, and go upriver? Which, interestingly, the random encounter that led them to a shrine was one where I designed the first jungle. I think I've told this story. I have told this story before. I designed this mini dungeon on the spot, and that is now a stronghold for one of the players. Like they built this island in the middle of the river, like this kind of Amazon or Zambezi or whatever kind of river.
Well, there you have it. It's cool if things can go off. People can go off the beaten path and just pick a lane.
But it started obviously very small though, with just like here's the thing to go at. A reason to go into the jungle is this, and then things even from the first session naturally emerged that mattered later. And that, which is not a top-down form of world building. I always had some ideas, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll put these adventures in. but there's a mixture of the top down and the bottom up, isn't there? The top down, if you like, you map out everything, fine, but that's a lot of money and time, as it were, putting into stuff that you might not use or might not have any value in it. Whereas, just kind of sometimes having a minimum of here is what you can do in the campaign, and then letting the rest naturally begin to come about.
I think the idea is that eventually, right, you sort of build up kind of like a backlog, and it kind of has its own momentum. So you're no longer worried so much if like any one particular group will use the stuff, since you have this world of yours, right?
Yeah.
And you'll maybe other players will explore it, or maybe you'll run a one shot there on a convention, or something like that. I think so. I think eventually you sort of evolve beyond the the efficiency perspective.
Yes.
But while we're still in efficiency land, like while we're still building the runway and the scaffolding and that sort of stuff, I totally agree, of course, right? Like you're like, okay, I might not use this. What do I prioritize? How do I use my limited time in the most effective way possible? Yeah, for sure.
I think so. I think there's a thing where, of course, someone could be like, I think it's that and there's a stage of life thing there. Boringly, but when some group, someone's like, oh, I just love doing this, so what, when you were a university student, you created this incredibly detailed world, and you were lucky enough to find a group who were available to play it. That's amazing, that's good. But obviously different people at different times are gonna, how many people can just say, yes, I have almost like 30 hours a week to put into preparation and running the game. I do not prep as much as I play, probably weekly, realistically, because I don't really have the time to do that. If I want to play a couple of times a week, 2 or 3 times a week usually, I don't have time. I don't have time to do like 7 or 8 hours of prep, if that would be the equivalent, 1 hour for 1 hour.
I think I've assimilated hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of gaming material already, right? Because I've written sort of detailed analysis and reviews of all of them. It only takes a while to unlock knowledge again, right? Yeah, so you can just run. So getting these sort of like fairly satisfying adventure locations, or the materials I need to run a satisfying game of D&D is pretty easy. And it's
I agree.
Even if it's not my own, and I obviously like I ran Carcosa and that sort of stuff. Before that, of course, I also started with my own stuff running D&D Basic, but. Even if it's not your own stuff, I just find I take such what do you call that? There's a sort of visceral enjoyment out of just out of running D&D, and again watching your players sort of like trying to penetrate this sort of rat maze that you've laid out before them, and trying to get through it and trying to adjudicate. And you have all these things happening at once, and you're trying to keep the pace going, and you're entertaining them. It's I feel I'm constantly engaged when I run D&D. So if it's my own setting, great. If not, it's also still great.
No, I enjoy running pre-built stuff. That's not a problem. It's certainly easier sometimes, but I write a lot of my own stuff. I was going to say, I agree though that much like with any skill, you're much better able to spend less time prepping or practicing or whatever else when you've done it a lot already, because you're so much more able to be like, okay, so just we'll do it. Roll your encounter. Give me a minute to prepare the random encounter that you've just rolled, and let's go. Whereas obviously that's kind of thing that earlier on, when you're less experienced, that kind of stuff takes time. Or again, you're like, oh, okay, you've gone in this direction, and I need to quickly prepare something for you to do, or I need to check through what options, other stuff I've already written. Obviously, I haven't done this, but some people are like, oh yeah, I've written loads of layers. I have loads of layers. I have index cards. That's amazing. That's such a later time saver for.
I remember when I did. So when I ran Carcosa, I eventually just figured out that like all of the you've got a monster type there, and it's called the Spawn of Shub Niggurath, and it's a random monster essentially. So it has a random hit dice range. It can have all these special abilities. After 2 or 3 of them, I was like, well, it's actually pretty boring if all they do is attack, even if I just use the encounter reaction table. So at some point I started like sort of coming up on the fly with like, you know, the random objectives or like personalities, and you know, so very often they would have a chance to interact with the monsters, and you know, they would often have fairly simple motivations, which was like to eat, right? But
They want to
um,
eat.
yeah, you know, we're just looking for some, again, some people to eat, and then you're like, oh, this thing looks pretty dangerous, but we did just massacre the troop of red men, you know, 2 hexes back. So, yeah, of course, flying horrible monster, I'll just leap on your back and I'll lead you to the corpses, and then he arrives, and then there's no corpses to be found. Obviously, they've been taken away. So then you have a slavering horrible monster that will devour you, right?
Yeah,
But no,
deservedly.
right. Yeah, but this idea of like, yeah, you get way better at just coming up with a good, even a random encounter, you can kind of spin that into something interesting on the fly. That's true. I do also recall my my Dark Heresy DMing days, and I think you get a feel for like the pacing of if it's one group in particular, like the pacing of your group really well. So what'll happen is that you can kind of get them to there you figure out how much you need more or less to like make sure they can get through the session without you having to resort to like very unethical dark side stalling tactics or illusionism or other nonsense, right? But also without like having to sink in like 10 or 8 hours. But yeah, no, it was I remember a couple of hours. I remember you know, we would go out on Saturday, and I would wake up on Sunday usually pretty early, and I would prepare for the session of Dark Heresy I would have, which would start at like 12 o'clock or something like that. So I'd have a couple of hours to like write everything out. I'd already be thinking about how the adventure would progress, or the general concept of the adventure, like before that. But then I would prepare all these things that I would need. So yeah, for sure.
I was going to say we do have some questions which we'll do in a minute. I was going to say I'll finish up on the open table game. As I say, I will do
I do have another if you'll permit a brief sidetrack. Actually, like, what would you recommend as an appendix, and like a couple of books? Books. We're talking about books again. A couple of books for like as good inspiration for like a traveler campaign.
Yes, that's a good question. I feel like in my experience of reading sci-fi, but looking at traveler stuff like Foundation, Vorkosigan Saga, I think has a little touch of it. Is you know, on the space opera side of things. Maybe it's different, but for vibes, something like Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogy, which is obviously a terraforming trilogy, but like there's something there. Dune is a really obvious one, again, maybe on the more space opera-y side. What else might be Hammer Slammers for the military, kind of space military stuff. That feels
Hammer
like
Slammer seems pretty damn suitable. I do love that one. Have you ever heard of the Demon Princes by Jack Vance?
No, you've told me about them. I've not read them. I like Jack Vance. I should be reading Planet of Adventure this year. Actually, was my plan. So, not Demon Princes though.
Jack Vance's space setting seems so eminently suitable for, especially in Demon Princes. But I believe Planet of Adventure also takes place in the Gaian Reach, which is the you know, the large stellar cluster of over 1,000 worlds that you know, that these stories are set in. But like, his setting seems perfect for an RPG, because like he elucidates it so well in Demon Princess. The concept is basically that, well, you know, all of these planets are sort of sovereign. They're sort of vaguely, loosely tied into a federation, but they're essentially sovereign. But that also means that criminals, as soon as they leave the planet, you can't really do much. There's a sort of interstellar police force that'll you know, it has some jurisdiction within the stellar cluster, but then they just go outside of it, right? So you have a type of bounty hunter that'll try to like hunt them down, and that's kind of like the only countermeasure. And you know, that already is a perfect framework for like space hijinks of many
definitely
kinds.
And that's also a classic Star Wars D6 campaign type. Bounty Hunters is a classic D6 campaign, because hey, here's some bounties. And I'd say in D&D, I fairly often will try to spin bounties are not an uncommon thing I put into D&D, like go, by that I mean, classic, go and get some humanoids, go and hunt this evil wizard down, whatever it is.
Yeah,
so
and
I think
feel
that's
also
definitely an RPG-able thing.
Yeah, I mean, with Traveler, it would begin with you, like the first bounty might be like a guy you just gun down in a bar, basically. Maybe you have to spike his drink because he's a really good blaster gunman, right? That's how he stayed alive ahead of the feds. But you could end with like some guy running his own, like having set up shop on some backwards planet where like the natives worship him like a god, or something way crazier. You can really scale that up. That's
is his name Kurtz by any chance?
Yeah. That in Stars Without Number, they actually called them Kurzes, there was like a real term for like people that go to primitive planets and set themselves up as like gods with with their superior technology. There's like, it happened so often.
In Star Wars the original series, this was they did that, but they'd be Nazis. Do you remember that in Star Wars the original series they'd do that, but they'd just be Nazis? Like this was the Nazi world.
That's Patterns of Force. Yeah, no, it was a sociologist who tried to you had 2 planets, and he tried to sort of they were in an economic depression and a famine, so he tried to sort of get them out of that depression, and this was his solution. His solution was the final solution, I guess. It was National Socialism. So, and he was like, "Oh, let's just turn them exactly into 20th century Nazis." Yeah, what could go wrong?
Exactly. But no, I agree that seems like a natural campaign
full of Nazis. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Gene Roddenberry, like, guys, I got a story idea. But yeah, I think with Traveller, and also you can build the other stuff in, like, oh, we've got a better ship. Oh, we've got more retainers. Essentially the equivalent of more retainers. We've got like we've gone from being just a couple of us guys on a second-hand scout ship up to we have like a cruiser. And we're going to be dropping in a company of bounty hunters, basically, whilst a crack team go to find the Kurtz.
At some point, your bounty is going to be some crazy ass pirate lord with his own fleet, right? Like that, you can really you can scale that shit up. It has no limits. Also, by the way, now that you bring it up, Star Trek the original series, that would be like, I feel, the raddest fucking science fiction campaign ever. I know nothing about the space system. Scathe is great. Yes.
Yeah.
And also, I believe hordes of murderous work-shy hippies.
Just like in real life.
Like an ancient sort of like order of bureaucrats using social science and hordes of work-shy hippies.
They all wear they wear robes. They wear blue robes with a pattern of yellow stars upon them.
Yes.
So yeah, I was going to say, I was finishing up on my the open table game. Yeah, no, good call, Matt. The open table game. One thing about that, and that I enjoy, is because we tend to be like, okay, we're run in a particular area with a particular group until more or less they're too far ahead of everyone else, and then they finish an adventure, they train, they're a long way ahead of everyone else, and then we'll go back to the characters who are earlier on timeline wise. Occasionally I'm like, okay, we have to, because the timelines could cross, we need to actually pause and go back. Usually it doesn't matter. That doesn't usually happen. But it is a fun thing. One thing that is built into that is variety. It's the same for my weekly game that's been running for 7 years. Is that I'm like, oh yeah, so the last 3 adventures, because they're 2 of them are ongoing technically, and one is semi-ongoing alongside it. There's one where they went to rescue some missing merchant's missing son who'd been kidnapped by a devil cult in the city. And that I published that dungeon actually on my Patreon recently, the Devil Cult Hideout. And then another one going simultaneously with that is they've decided to go and negotiate with an elf prince to bring him into a growing alliance with the restored dwarf kingdom in Ilafan and Daggerford. They're like, oh yeah, we're going to convince the elves, and the elves are like, yeah, you can do that. We'll help, but you need to help us by going and negotiating with this fairy prince who lives in Fairy. To help us kind of with our water supply. And so they've just gone off to an adventure in fairy instead, like that, which is very different. They are currently sailing from a different dimension again, a submarine which is fueled by the equivalent of ectoplasm, to take that as a prize or gift to the fairy prince. So the fairy prince will help the elf king. I know this is all just kind of
fairy prince, eh?
Yes,
All
indeed,
right.
he's the coral king. He's called. There's this deeply. The players find it really unsettling that this is an underwater realm.
Find him
they can all
unsettling.
breathe. Yeah, they find them unsettling, but they find all the Fae unsettling because they're all pretending to be fish. So all these like fish-shaped people who you're like, I think that's really a fish. I think it's just pretending to be a fish.
Fishy, fairy-like sort of king, an elderly man with like surrounded by young, virile, boyish servants, scantily clad.
David Bowie is dead. Okay, David Bowie is dead.
It's David Bowie. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Jareth the Goblin King. But yeah, it's the variety, the natural, and also my co-DM running his lower level adventure where I did find, to punish him for coming up with annoying character combinations, I did go deep into the lore of the Forgotten Realms 2nd edition like priest books and find a strong priest kit that gave me loads of stuff, and I was like, yeah, now I'm the broken abusive player.
I recall the first incarnation of like Voss Argul so that's the high level monk in Slith Hive, but the first incarnation was played by our buddy Jeffe, and he made some sort of, this is in 2nd edition, we were doing Labyrinth of Madness, we were running them through them, and this was some abomination. I believe he was dual classed. He was using 2 different varieties of monk to do it, which along different paths. So this was a legitimate dual classing sort of option, but it was horrific to see just all the disgusting bonuses interact in ways that the no sane creator would have endorsed. Absolutely monstrous.
Yeah. I was going to say, yes, there are a few like this. I would say what I'm actually playing is not a good thing. Is most of this stuff doesn't meaningfully break the game. It's just like I get an extra spell. It's fun. It's fun being like I think I like, because it's not like that particular one, probably maybe an exception, but it's a thing I enjoy about that is I'm like, in 3rd edition you really can spec this character to be super powerful and break the game from like level 1. You find the equivalent in 2nd edition and you go deep into the lore and you find something really powerful. You still get killed really quickly if you're running the game properly. You're like, it's still so deadly a game if you play bad, especially at low levels. My guy has a spell that increases his AC, improves his AC by 1, and slowly turns his beard silver.
Oh, that's dear. Okay. Yeah, that does seem like it should be nerfed, like burning oil was nerfed.
Yeah, my spell is the burning oil. It's the burning oil.
It's the burning oil of the Wandering Marches BX game. Nerf burning oil. It's too strong. No, I get what you're saying. I think probably in 3rd edition the challenge would be, in theory, like the DM could probably compensate by making everything more difficult, but then is everybody equally overpowered, right? I think that's it's going to be the differences between different combinations that'll start causing problems. But I don't know. Like when I
agree to some degree. Right? To some degree, I don't think at low level. I don't think that even at low level that will really matter. But I think there are combos. Certainly, when at mid level, you could imagine being like in a 4th level game or a 5th level game and being like, this guy has got a kit and a set of NWPs for some reason, and this other thing that he's picked, and he's a priest, and it's all really powerful together, and he can do so much more. Whereas the guy who just rolled up a fighter and maybe he's used specialization, but that's it.
No specialization, because he didn't read it. He's just like,
give me an axe. I actually do have exactly. You have a player who hasn't even read that, and they're like, why does my guy get at level 5 or whatever it is 3-2, and that's it, but nothing else. But now this guy gets. You can imagine a sense of disparity.
That's the only thing I get. This fucking game sucks.
But you can imagine a player. I'm more thinking the comparison to a player who has spec'd everything. It's not even that the other guy is really breaking it, because it's not that powerful, but it's just the sense of like, Why is he doing all that stuff?
Yeah,
I think I can see
you're
that.
right. Actually, I've been looking into. I think it was Skills in Magic, the 2E player option book. Today, even looking up for it. I was checking out some of the NWPs there, and even like I was like, oh, they already came up with concentration, but it's very minor. You have to make a concentration check, and then if you take 2 damage or less, you can keep casting a spell. And I think that there was like some hindrance associated with it. So it's like it's almost like the abuse was kind of contained there. You could spec a little bit, you could gerrymander a little bit. Most of it was sort of was still going to be
and in fact, really the main thing you actually can spec, the thing where you can character build, and that's character building culture, the only thing is actually NWPs, because there are more and less efficient ways to pick NWPs, basically, is what I'm saying. But for kit, like, you can be like, oh, so famously I know I've said this before on the channel, but the Elven Spellblade, that one, but that guy, like, oh, that's so broken. You're like, so what you're saying is this guy can cast spells in combat, that is really powerful, but can just be killed. It's not that hard. He's not that hard to kill compared to anyone else. He's easier than other people, and he doesn't do anything else in the campaign. So that's good. He's good, but it's not game breaking. And I think that's the thing, that it's not that you're picking 8 different things to combine to create a game breaking character. It's more like, here is a big advantage, here is a hindrance.
Synergy, that the designer could not have
possibly. So it's not about synergy. It's just about whether or not you think the particular thing is annoying or not, I think, is more the thing. Here's a question. E asks, do you have something else you want to say?
Well, I was going to say that even in like these later games where more of the performance of characters was determined not by like the actions of the players during the game, but like sort of whether you did your homework before that. But even there, of course, you can still like die. You would still have like weaknesses as well. But I do admit that it's a larger problem there, right?
Well, and it takes a lot longer. The main thing is it takes a lot longer. Third edition plus, it all takes a lot longer. So what's happening is, like, let's do this infinite length combat, and then maybe you'll die, or not.
Oh dear. You die in round 1 or 2. I feel like the amount of damage out. Never mind. Let's not talk too much about third edition. Actually,
yeah, indeed. But he asks, you guys have been running lots of games lately. Any new insights that the extra table hours have generated replay and reffing? So I guess more at the kind of the actual the anvil side of things, at the grindstone of actually playing the game. Any insights you gained from running a regular campaign of AD&D for a year? What have you learned, Prince, about play/reffing?
Well, that's the sort of, I guess, the transition in from like a core system to sort of a more customized world is like a totally natural one in 1E, since there's a meme of like, you gotta run it raw, which is done with, like, I feel 90% good intentions, right? Like it's true. Like, learn how to fucking play a game before you start immediately tinkering with it. I agree that that's to the good, but 1E has to be, you can only play it if you have to get the chops to sort of make calls and make decisions and figure things out. You're going to find contradictions. You're going to find like ambiguities there. You're going to have to make calls. There was like one really specific example that comes to mind, which is insect swarm or something, right? It was a very powerful 4th level druid or 3rd level druid spell. Summon insects, right? And you can disable. The creature can only fend off the insects. It's not even quite clear what that fending off means. It's, again, you're just going to have to think like, well, is it reasonable? Can you run? Right? Okay. What can you do while the insects are biting you? But then, what creatures are not affected. There's a couple of creatures where it's very obvious whether or not they would be affected. Elementals, anything like ghosts, right? And then there's like a sort of some ambiguity there where you have to actually make the call. You have to make the decisions, and then you sort of have to counterbalance. You have to balance like what is reasonable and intuitive, and what is for the good of the game. And from that you kind of have to like synergize a a call, and how we usually handle those situations is I make the call during the game because I don't want to slow down the game, while I consider all of the ramifications. But I make it clear that like it's quite possible that this will not be definite until like later on. I'll have some time to maybe I'll discuss it with a person, or I'll think about it. Like, okay, how would that work? And right, so I give myself like what do you call that? A second chance, a post sleep correction if I need one. But like that process of like learning and interpreting the game was like very very satisfying.
Yeah,
What about you, Owen?
I suppose. Well, I was just going to say on that. I suppose part of it is what you're actually. And I know you kind of said this, but what you are including is yes, you should run it rules as written, pretty much in the sense you should understand the intention behind what the rules are doing before you change it. That means you do run it raw. And I know I've done that with 1E, and it was an interesting experience, including doing stuff like running unarmed combat several times. And there was a case where very early on, they saw the players saw some goblin running around near the village, and were like, "Should we try to capture it and find out what it's doing here?" And so I was like, "Okay." So and we're using pure 1E at the time, and so you learn to use those systems, and you see, by the way, 1E on combat works. It's fine. It's it's a special event. It's something you should think about. And I'm happy that I use the 2E version now. But it's interesting. It's one of those things like, oh, actually, it does work. It's just something which you have to understand as it's very much a kind of mini game for a particular situation. And once you learn that, you are able to make different judgments at other times rather than being
it works. But if you get surprised with that, I feel that trying to interpret that while also keeping the game going is it's easy to like sort of like trip up. You really need a while to like sort of. It's mostly also like the sort of like the wording. And like again, in certain cases you just have to make a judgment call. But that's ultimately AD&D, I guess. It's like you're 90 or 95%. It's just this huge comprehensive system, but there are actually gaps in there, and those gaps the whole thing can only fly if you make good judgment calls. If like if you as the individual have the confidence and the vision to sort of like animate it. It's never going to give you all the answers.
I agree. I think what I'm saying though is that it's by with my experience of that was particular. I was like, oh, okay, now I understand that. I understand how to run it if I need to, and I also understand what kind of situations I need to be able to just do something else in, because I'm like, okay, this doesn't matter. Let's just do something else. And I think that's experiential. In terms of, I'm trying to think. The last year, probably just I'm thinking about a couple of times where I've been like, yes, actually, probably the way one of the experiences is running an adventure, either something you've written or is mostly you, or something you're using where you're like, yes, you realize the habits of adventures, whether you're writing them or you're reading them and then using them, which even if they're good, are more likely to bog down. Because I'm thinking about this is something that came up in Spelljammer with one adventure we ran, where I think I was like, I think the threat is not pressing enough. So they're like, oh, we want to go and fight these goblins in the forest, but you could tell they're kind of like, oh, should we do this first? And what about this? And should we prepare in this way? And it's something where I was like, this is running slowly and it's not that I should therefore create artificial pressures. Oh, your ship blows up, it springs a leak in the tire, but rather it was something in the architecture of the world and the things the players thought they could do and stuff that meant that they were tempted to lollygag in a way that isn't normal. And so partly it's just a case sometimes where it's a minor failure, but where you realize, I failed in putting some of the stuff together there to keep the players feeling like let's pick something, let's do something, let's go and do something. Some of it's luck as well. You can spend a session where just stuff happens or goes a bit wrong, or they have a random encounter which isn't super XP bearing or something, and a few things happen and it's just a quiet session. But it's also, I've definitely found cases where I'm like, I have probably designed this in a way that has meant, or used this in a way that has meant it's been slow.
I mean, that definitely exists. And I believe I was an early proponent of the idea that, and this was during a Bruce Cordell review of the Shattered Circle, where I was like, what kind of monster puts a pit trap in a random hallway? Okay, you're going to spend the next X amount of sessions, like the players are going to go, oh no, what if there's a pit trap? And there will be one who's always going to be, no, what if we run into another pit trap? And then they go through the fucking tunnels with the 10-foot pole, 10-foot poling everything. And it just, it's horrible. It's like you sort of tax. You impose a tax on all actions in the game. That's no good. Yeah, as far as keeping pace is concerned, I'm kind of glad that again, and this is as far as keeping pace is concerned, but I run a game where it's pretty easy if they're in Beastmaker Mountain, which is a pretty cool dungeon, even though it has a few you know they kind of needed like 2 or 3% more polish, but it's actually pretty solid. But you could just say, oh, you guys are discussing it, okay, I'm gonna check for a random encounter. That's fine. You can buy yourself 10 minutes, but I'll check for random encounters.
You can in dungeons, in places like that, where there is a natural mechanical time limits. Also at lower levels it applies with light as well, of course. Any resource that could matter in that situation. I'm not saying light does not matter very much at high levels comparatively, but you get my point. As any of those levers,
and for like in town stuff or decision making stuff, I've started kind of cajoling or requesting that my players, before a session begins, I at least encourage them, like, figure out what you want to do, right? That's good. Just make a decision, and then that's kind of like the strategic part. And then when play begins, obviously, if you have some last minute preparations, by all means. But then people are already like, that time is sort of easier because it's you can find a snatch that could discuss on Discord. Oh, are we going to do this or are we going to do this? And then when you're playing, you're burning a lot of time. Basically, there's like 5 people there for every minute. Basically, costs 5 times the amount of time. And it's sort of it goes a lot faster if they already know, like, sort of approximately what they're going to do.
I think so. Sometimes I find that reasonable or easy to do. So in some cases, I'm thinking particularly in the weekly realms game, because the 7-year game there, because it's the same guys who've been playing for a long time, and it is somewhat in the open table, but with a caveat in a second. I'll just be like, oh, so what do you think you guys are going to do next? Now that you've finished this adventure and you've got back to the city or whatever it is, where are you going next? What are you doing next? And they will usually be able to say then, or via chat. With the open table game, because it's a slightly different dynamic, though I do know the players pretty well by this point, most of them. Because it's a bit less, bit lower commitment, I guess. It can sometimes require a bit of improv on the night when it's like, oh, we have these players, and that means it might make sense for them to use these characters. Like, it can shift a bit just because of that side of it. And you have to, but then again, that's just a case of saying, okay, you guys pick what you want to do. And it should just take a few minutes, really. You can, once you've had your pre-game chat, you should then be like, take 2 or 3 minutes to decide what you're doing. And then we'll do that,
I think another major one that maybe is worth discussing is like I guess more information presentation. Like, if you're giving description of a room, and this is also a fine-tuning thing, because there's no, like, some players might need a little bit more, others might actually need far less, or might prefer to get a bare bones description, and they'll, like, interrogate the DM, right? I guess how to present sort of information and details without overloading the players or giving away the game too early. That's another one that's it's pretty critical.
Oh yes, no, I agree. One thing actually I've done more, I'm not sure if it certainly feels like the last year since we literally did this very discussion topic, it probably has been more, but I'd have to think it might be older than that. I've definitely increasingly lent into, on the note of time usage, I have pressed towards just, and this is most often probably in the open table game, because that, especially when we've had maxing out like 9 players or something, but just vigorous use of a caller being like, Prince, so where's the party going? Or I'll be like, I can take a vote, or Prince can decide, that kind of thing. Essentially, or sometimes be like, no. And that's something which I think partly that is a situational thing. You have a really big group randomly, just everyone's there, and you kind of need to just be a bit more ruthless about time. And not always successfully, of course. I'm not saying I'm always successful with that. But you learn to be, but also it's probably also just experience and confidence at knowing what the social dynamics are, and being like, actually, a good way to do this is just to say, where are you going next?
But you're also the ref, right? And you're kind of like you. I do think that one of your tasks is to keep the game moving. It was actually one of the things I didn't like. This was very early on. But we would have some DMs that they were basically like, well, the players, they get to decide the pace, so they would be perfectly comfortable with letting us meander around, and that's actually a very I often found it kind of like frustrating. I guess then you try to get the players to move, right? But it's it helps if the DM is more like, if you kind of like keep the game going. It's part of the responsibilities, in my opinion. Without obviously, you don't want to like.
I think there's a tension, and I would say I'm sure I've gotten that wrong. Yeah. Oh no, yeah. And I'm sure I've made that. I've failed at all that kind of balance many times. But certainly sometimes, you as a DM can feel like, this is lagging, isn't it? And you realize it's been 5 minutes or something since the decision was opened up, and you're no closer to concluding. Okay, you realize this is not a good use of our time, and we're not going to get much done. Sometimes one thing I would say, here's a corollary / caveat to that, though, is in a long campaign, and I think this is something which occasionally, I think, when you're kind of told, when someone is saying, look, everything needs to be insanely efficient the whole time, you're like, look, 7 years later, when you know people very well and there's a lot of backstory and history in the group, it's just natural some sessions will be quieter. Like, of course, you just got to, isn't. Yeah,
you phone one in. Yeah, of course.
I think there's a degree. It is a bit like, look. It has been there have been. I'm just trying to think what. We've played about 600 or 700 hours of D&D. I think it's okay if we tangent for 15 minutes talking about some rubbish.
Of course.
Yeah.
But
I think it's
at the
contextual.
same time, you're also you're no longer in the good old college days. It's like you easily you have 8-hour sessions. You play every week, and now I'm pretty happy if I can get 4 days on a weekday, right? But like if you cut that by half, that's you have to be a little bit more frugal, and you do have to be.
I think so. Yeah.
I do find myself going like, listen, actually. 30 minutes of role playing and a shopkeeper while the players are goofing around. That's not the experience I'm gonna be looking for, nor it's one that I'll cater to. Right? I'm actually trying to get the game going. Get into danger. It's also like one of the things that Gabor Lux does in his 7 Voyages of Zilarthan game. Like in the beginning, like some of the players, there would be just this excessive sort of there would be this excessive planning, right? And planning is good. Like we've had good assault plans, right? That's fun. It's part of the game. But just excessive planning and then excessive discussion of like hypotheticals and more hypotheticals, and it bogs the game down. And at some point, like he'll berate us. He'll be like, "Come, what is this? It's no heroic spirit. It's not. You're not playing Shadowrun, right? Come on." So that was. Sometimes it's okay, right? Obviously, you have less time. It's okay to sort of whip them in line a little bit, right?
Yeah, and that is though a useful thing there is to, and it kind of does partly depend on social dynamic, but then it's exactly what you as a DM should establish. Is to some degree, that's good to almost be explicit about, like, guys, we should make a decision and just play. Or, oh yeah, sure, this time it's okay that you're messing around a bit. Would you, as in you're wanting to kind of go around and check on. I'm thinking actually on the note of shopping. We did know in character role playing, but recently the characters did spend part of a session before they went into a dungeon. They got a list of interesting shops in Skullport. This is like a group that runs between level 5 or 6 and level 8, I think. And they're like, okay, there's these interesting shops. Can we just go around and find out what they do? Can, one at a time, can we find out what they do? And we're doing like city encounter table checks as they went between shops. So they're still risk.
To introduce some danger. I was about to say, like,
but they were then getting the reward of being like, here, we're at the weird shop. What does the weird shop sell? And I was like, this is what they sell. And that was fun. And that was something but that was a bit of that itself was almost a bit of a treat or a special to be like, oh yeah, let's go around this cool place. There's a bit of danger. Okay, now here's a weird thing we met. And now we're going to go into the sewers underneath Skullport to find where this ring has gone. This is what, by the way, this was. I might have told you about this story separately, but this is a cool emergent story where a wizard had found a ring of invisibility, but which was connected to the Kuatoa goddess. Like it was like just not a cursed ring, but just like weird. And he was like going really into
Bildol poop.
Blibdoodle poop, yeah. So he had this, and he's really into Bloodle Poop, so that's fine, great, good. And then in Waterdeep, are we not all? Hail Bloodle Poop. But then I rolled a city encounter. They're in Waterdeep, and it was on the. I think I'm trying to think if I was using. I think I switched over to the nocturnal table because I use city system and nocturnal table, and amongst other things for city encounters. And I rolled a thief, and I rolled a high enough level thief. I think I just was like, I'll generate a thief level, because it said the level range. It's level 12 thief with X pickpocketing then. And I did the pickpocketing procedure and then said, okay, what items do you have that are accessible to the character? So I said, you've been pickpocketed, what items do you have accessible? And he listed them. I randomly generated that it was the ring, because the ring stays in a pouch rather than on his hand, obviously. And so he's like, I want this ring back. They then have gone through loads of hoops to kind of find their way, going through the caverns underneath Waterdeep, climbing up a cyclopean wall with a broken underground set of locks for this river. They've kind of snuck through a slaver's fortress accidentally. They didn't realize there's a slaver's fortress. And they're in Skullport. And now they've just gone into, having talked to lots of other people and using spells to locate, location spells and stuff. They've got into the sewers underneath Skullport, where they've so far met a hag and a bunch of Yeth hounds they've had to fight. But the hag, we left the last session, literally it was one of those beautiful timing things. The hag was running back towards her lair, towards a magic two-way mirror, seemingly, where she called into it asking for her master to help. I won't see more on the stream, obviously, because it's yet undiscovered. But yeah, you're like, that is just the emergent thing of they wanted to do all this stuff. They wanted to go after the ring. They've gone all through all the kind of the hoops. They've fought lots of stuff. They've been lost in the caverns. And
you've got the chutzpah and the building blocks to sort of like allow them to do that as well, which I think is one of the the nicer parts of RPGs in general. Like, okay, you can just do that for sure.
It's not. I don't. Obviously, it's not what your day one campaign DM should feel like they have to do. But there is a great positive. There's a sort of a freedom of a kind for the players certainly, but also to the DM in just saying yes. I don't mean a kind of story game to say yes, but yes, and but rather that there's a degree to which if the players say, there's a map. Can we go to this place? The answer is you need to do these things to get there. There's this way in which you're like, yes, the world is full of possibility, rather than no, the world is very small and very limited to this thing that I'm willing to do.
Confined by a series of narrow barriers, for sure.
And it can still be kind of a CAG campaign in that case. I'm not trying to be like, if you run a more limited campaign, you're bad. I don't mean that. But it's that if that just is where it stays forever, you're like, it's very narrow. It's lots of invisible barriers, or lots of visible barriers, in fact. I think you'll find players start to feel frustrated and de-invested, because they're going to be a lot more like, okay, so this is just it will feel less like a world and more like, in a negative sense, a game. It is a game, but it'll feel like negative in a sense, just like, here's the thing, we're clicking buttons to do stuff, okay, rather than like, I want to go and
but that's also true, right? I guess kind of like the appeal of RPGs is that you have all these, that there's all this possibility, and you can kind of go off the beaten path, and you can exactly. The interesting part I found was that in even in games that you create as like a sandbox, in my experience, players will still actually usually after a while, right? In the beginning, having the ability to go anywhere and like do a bunch of stuff, they'll try to do that. But after a while, randomly exploring places is not as interesting as pursuing some sort of significant hook or something like that, or making a concerted effort to get through a single very large dungeon, that sort of stuff, that in the end that will still sort of like interest them more. So that's why in even now, right, like my players dithered around for a while, but trying different adventure locations, but then now they're cracking Beastmaker Mountain, and they're pretty excited, and now they're finally they've discovered that behind the already sort of like sprawling large mansion, there's actually a series of caverns. It's like even deeper into Beastmaker Mountain. Like, oh shit, it has a level 2. Wow, okay.
That's one thing, is that
monsters and all that stuff.
Yeah, the variety and the choice then shifts towards the dungeon. If every dungeon is very small, I don't even mean tiny. What I mean is if every room, every single dungeon is 20 to 30 rooms, like, oh, that's a good couple of nice sessions, isn't it? But if everything is only that size, then obviously you need much more stuff, don't you? But if you've got a very big, deep location in one place, then that itself becomes the campaign. Hence why mega dungeons can work. What I was going to say was, I agree. My players have objectives, and they pick what those objectives are. Well, I think they in the long running campaign, at least particularly, one thing I think I found is that they are a bit like, great, we're going to travel and go and do this quest, call it. We want to go and do this. We're trying to find the parts of the Amulet of the World Serpent, or we are going to go. There's a guy who wants to try to get Baba Yaga as a patron at high levels, and he's annoyed his previous supernatural patron in doing so. But like, oh yeah, let's go to find where there's rumors of Baba Yaga's hut, which with the Lisa Smedman module, by the way, which I'm looking forward to.
I believe I've reviewed it.
You have?
Yes,
you liked
that's
it.
Another
you liked
one.
it, yeah.
I wonder if I mean now probably the would be less suitable for 1E because of the lack of treasure, but that's easily solved. But
easily
yes,
fixed, yeah.
I wonder. It's probably still pretty good. I feel there's.
This is S5, by the way, for those wondering. S5, Dancing Hut of Baba Yaga by Lisa Smedman. Not any other version of the same title. That specific one.
Which is in Dragon Magazine, which I have not yet.
Yeah, there is also a Dragon Magazine version.
Yes, but yeah, Lisa Smedman's The Dancing Hut of Baba Yaga. There was something about it. Spoilers, obviously, or whatever. It's the module is older than I am, but this idea of there was almost like it was like a tesseract, or you had all these sort of hidden areas and dimensions. The inhabitants would know this. It's like the I just finished reviewing a dungeon for Arduin. It was called Caliban, and despite having one of the best sort of like introductory blurbs that I've ever seen, it was just room, treasure, guardian monster, trap, next room, no connections, nothing. And then but this is the opposite, where there's actually a lot of stuff going on. It's kind of like going on beneath the surface. So there's like a method to the madness.
It's a very cool module.
Courage to interact at a deeper level with the adventure. Yeah.
But yeah, what I was going to say is that what I think the players in that campaign see is that there's a kind of like, we are going to pick something to go and do, and that will be fun when we get there. But we accept there's probably going to be travel to get there of one form or another, and that will also be fun. So they're like, we get some of the kind of random exploration and some of that stuff along the way, but then we also get to go to like the actual thing we want to go to. And I think that's a kind of a virtuous combination of the two things in the game. Is it that particular adventure? Interestingly, they haven't got there yet. They decided to do it as a winter thing, and they're like, okay, we're overwintering, but the place where Baba Yaga is a microclimate, which is warmer. And it's not that far away. It'll be like a few weeks travel, but we need to get. So they've talked to the nomads, and they've bought elk. They've got like sleds and stuff. They prepared. They got and they travelled across along the major roads that were still being patrolled and stuff until they got there. But then as they've got in there, they've then entered a different fairy realm. But this is a rather nastier fairy realm. Where they fought like displacer beasts, and we basically with Artemis hunted some lycanthropes and some stuff like that. But that's which is part of the process for them. They're not like, oh wow, we're not at the quest yet, because they know they'll get to the quest. That's one thing again about being an established campaign, is that players trust the process more. But they are happy to have both elements. Yeah.
Beast always I think I guess eventually I now connect them with aliens because of the Coral, the A.E. van Vogt alien monster that they were originally based on. But I guess putting them in some sort of weird, eerie fairy plane is also probably pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's because I rolled. That was because I rolled big cat or great cat or whatever on the 1E fairy and sylvan settings random encounter table, and interpreted that. I was like, well, what would be a cat that could be there? So I was like, displace the beasts in a dark fairy realm. I also did I think it was tribesmen or something is on that, and I was like, okay, that is some Celts, like a warband of Celts who had portaled through because their archdruid had made a deal with the Queen of Air and Darkness to sacrifice them and be like, oh, I'll open a portal and bring the warband
send
through.
them in. Oh yeah. That's cool.
And then the party has encountered them and be like, the party's like, if you follow us, we will get you out. The party are not completely sure they can get out themselves, but like, follow us, be our friends. And they're all like they're all on half rations. They don't have enough food. They're about to get out, I think. But yes, so yeah, that
nice.
You just naturally that's one thing about the tables and the comfort with interpreting them that you only get through experience. It's not through being personally brilliant. It's through experience, isn't it? To be like, oh yeah, tribesman, what's going to make sense? Cat, what's going to make sense? That kind of thing. But no, I agree. So here was another question. This is from Commodore. He said, have you found any great maps or made any great maps recently for your games? Found maps?
I don't know if it's a great map. I've made a pretty decent map for the my entry for the upcoming fight on. That's for sure. Found any great maps? Having to dig back, I think it's probably still the Anthony Huzo stuff. I might have Anthony Huzo as best mapper.
Yeah. I was going to say I like lots of Tony's maps. I like a lot of Tony's maps. I think City of Brass is kind of almost a best in class of like, oh yeah, this is just this incredible, vast but also contained place. Yeah.
It would occasionally maybe would pose some problems with like how much the players can or cannot see, but otherwise I agree with you. That's that works really well. And I found most of the maps in Beholder magazine are very good, like very solid. Even like sometimes you'll be running players through the through the tunnels, and then they pop a question. Hey, listen, how wide are these sort of like these cave tunnels? And then you see the mad bastards have done it. That like every couple of feet or something, there's like a little note, a little number. I was like, what are these numbers for? Yeah, of course, it's the width of like the cavern, right? That sort of stuff. But it's usually you just notice dungeon flows well. Peacemaker Mountain is also really great.
I find that kind of stuff comes out of play typically. If you play tested something, you start being like, it's going to matter to say how wide stuff is.
For sure.
And I think there's an interesting thing with it was with my NAP 3 entry was stuff that came up as we continued playtesting and playing more as a module, and basically finishing it, which would set up them being able to go to the next part of that kind of adventure path, if you want to call it that. But you end up realizing, the players start asking about this kind of thing, and so we need to kind of, I hadn't thought about that very much, and that's a classic example of what playtesting exposes. But certainly with dungeons specifically, things like dimensions and interactivity, you often will not think about very much of it before your players play it, and then you'll be thinking about it a lot because your players keep asking questions. Here is a map I like. This is literally what we start talking about at the top of the program. There is a geodesic map of Mithril, the planet Mithril in the Sword Worlds. It's nothing amazing, to be clear. It's incredibly unglamorous. It's a geodesic map, but just incredibly functional. And I think because it's combined with procedure that is interesting to use relatively. Possibly there's I think I realized I was probably being over harsh and making them have too many encounters, which were slowing them down. I like the way the procedure works. But I think in a sense, it's a reminder that any functional, sensible map can be good. But I like the geodesic maps that Traveller modules come with sometimes. I think it's a really fun idea, especially if they're actually practical and functional. You're using them in the game, which you do in this because you have to drive your ATV to get to the different places.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There we go. I think we had some questions from John as well. I'll go and find those. Yeah, do you expect? I should say with Beastmaker Mountain, obviously they're doing that for a while. You know, how do you see the campaign? Is it do you see the campaign flowering outwards, kind of expanding sideways? Stables and
it's already moving into
or
stables.
beginning there,
Like
yeah,
one of them
yeah.
got infected with lycanthropy, which is actually pretty difficult to remove if you don't catch it immediately. And
Yeah,
I
that's right.
was quite comfortable with making the call. Like, okay, and I'd written some details down about like the city. That's another one where like if you run it like if you run AD&D for a while, you're at some point you also figure out, oh, okay, these details I would definitely need to know. Like if about a town, this is like the minimum viable information, the minimum information I would need, right? Um, but like, I was quite comfortable making the call. Like, okay, yeah, there's not a 12th level, cleric on
In the
demand,
town,
like
yeah.
ready to cast remove curse. So you're gonna have to go to a larger, like the regional capital of this place, right? Um, so that he's going to be out of the running if the rest of the party seems unwilling to join him. So he'll have to make a stable character. And I've also when basically the entire party, it wasn't technically a TPK because they weren't dead. They walked into like a nest of giant wasps, and they all like they failed those poison saving throws. It was like it was insane how hard they went down. And like essentially I think maybe one guy made it out or maybe no one. So I gave them a bunch of like low level retainers, and I was like, all right, you get to, yeah, one character made it out. I was like, yeah, okay, well the poison, they thought like they're dead. I was like, listen, you figure out from asking around, wasp poison doesn't kill you that quickly. It is lethal after a while, after a couple of days, right. Here you go, you all get level 1 fucking retainer characters except for this new guy. Go ahead,
To
mount the
survive it,
rescue
yeah.
operation, right? Yeah, go see if you can do it. That was the next session. It was quite
Yeah.
good.
No, I know that's right, and that's part of the organic growth and storytelling in the world. By
Yeah,
storytelling, I mean the things that naturally emerge from the game.
yeah, of course.
Not like, oh, I wrote this. There's a story I've written, and you're going to experience it, but rather like, but this is an option if you want to rescue them. I know it
Yeah,
came up in our Greyhawk game, which we're playing tomorrow actually. We haven't played since I think mid-June just due to scheduling, but yeah, our Greyhawk game, which is a D&D game as well, and quite long running too. That one, it's interesting. One, I remember when a PC that had leveled, a second level character died, the player making the calculation not to worry about getting him raised because it's like it's just going to be like more effective to go and level someone else up probably, because compared to the money you have to spend. But then, yeah, recently with a character death at the Temple of Elemental Evil, actually, in fact, they were like, okay, we need to go. What we need to do is we want to raise him. And they're like, I was going to take, where can we go? And I was like, well, you could go to like the city of Greyhawk, you go to Valuna. And they're like, well, or not, what would be the other place? Not Narwhal, somewhere like that, Narwhal. And they're like, okay, we'll go to Valuna. And they've got a Skyrider Paladin, so he'll fly and go and do that. And oh no, in fact, sorry, what happened was they were going to do that. Then I was like, no, actually, Otis has carrier pigeons who can take stuff backwards and forwards to the Archcleric of Valuna. That's literally what he can do, or whatever. So I was like, yeah, you can do that. But I was like, but now you owe for this raised dead or whatever it is, you now owe a favor to the Archcleric of Valuna. And that, that's something where you're like, oh, that is going to create a natural thing later. Is because they were like, oh yeah, he's died fighting against the Temple of Elemental Evil. Would do them a favor this time, but they have to do us a favor later. And obviously that kind of saves them the money, but they're kind of, and it's a natural thing where you're like, no, the Archcleric of Valuna would help against the Temple of Elemental Evil when asked by Otis to do so, but they're gonna, there'll be a price.
they're not going to do it for free.
Yeah,
Like that's what I like about AD&D is the idea of like this all this system shock stuff and like aging. They're not going to. That's such a high level clerics don't grow on trees. It's such a major demand, actually, raising people from the dead. It should not be like a revolving door type of thing. They might, how much raised dead spells does a high level cleric even have in him before he like strokes out or just the ages, right? Before he becomes decrepit. So it's a major thing.
I
of
think
course they would demand.
In this case, I was going to say part of the juice here actually was precisely on that note. I was like, well, the Archcleric is canonically high enough level to do a res, which doesn't age him and is more generous to the PC. But you know what? That's gonna But the thing is, that's gonna make you even more in debt. You're not less in debt. You're more in debt because you just
that guy,
he's
the
fantasy Pope give you
insanely
the
in
best
demand,
spell he has.
right?
Yeah,
Imagine,
exactly. Exactly.
14th or 15th level cleric. Yeah, of course he's going to have hordes of noblemen and like all petitioners. Please, Lord, take away my illnesses, like that sort of stuff. Yeah, of course.
Well, and even amongst adventurers, you're like, you might be like a 5th level party or 4th level party or something. But what about like the arch paladins of Furiondi who are like who are actually fighting evil dragons, and then their companions bring his broken corpse? The arch cleric is not going to prefer you over that guy. So in this case, you've got the help you've asked for, but that you're going to be the piper will cool down the line, and I think that's good. That's a kind of natural part of the dynamic. I was going to say, System Shock in the open table game with the brass submarine in the strange underwater realm where they can breathe. There was a whole thing where like we still, even though we can breathe underwater, we need to keep the pressure in the space because otherwise everything inside the submarine will break or not be useful. Which was a fun. I liked that they realized that because they were like, oh, it doesn't matter because we can breathe in the water. And then someone else was like, no, everything in here is not meant to be underwater. But there was because obviously there's this ectoplasmic ghosty theme. They use it as fuel. They use it for their torpedoes as well, actually, for their missiles. Nice. But they encountered I made like a weak ghost, like a 5 HD lesser ghost, which was, I think, had like a scare effect, and which didn't age, but it was a kind of a fear spell or touch age. The aging was only 1 year, but was still a system shock check. And it was such a fun thing where the player's like, this is really bad. Like system shock, even if you've got like a 90% chance.
One of the
one
of the funnier encounters in Beastmaker Mountain was like I did a little bit of improvising on that, but I saw the idea and I brought it to life. There was one area, it was like a faded dining hall, and then on top of one of the tables, so there's some silver cutlery which you can you can pilfer, but there's like this silver chalice, and atop of that chalice like a tiny spectral figure, right? And it's like jeering and cajoling, like fuck you, yeah, right? And this was a tiny specter, but it is like AC -3 or something like that. But it needs to touch you like 3 times before it properly drains a level. It was like a beautiful
before it drains level,
No, a beautiful little encounter.
I did I have I told you? I think I have. So I have said it probably on this show, but that I did once kind of a related idea is because I've been reading Indian in the Cupboard to the Kids, that series. So we read all 5 books, but the guys were like, at the ruined wizard's tower there's shapes seen above ground. Maybe there's bandits there. And the only shape above ground was that, like, I made a lesser shambling mound just due to the kind of, I was like, I want to see this level. But they found the place into the wizards. The tower's blown up apart from the shambling mound and a few treasure locations. And there were giant otters outside actually as well, but they could get down in via a kind of basement access. And one of the places was like all the wizards nerd stuff. So there was like a Drizzt Do'Urden graphic novel, for instance, that he had.
Oh yeah.
Obviously the guy was a loser. But he also had like a bunch of like miniatures or whatever in a stasis, in like and they're in a state kind of stasis field, like really well protected. But one of them actually came alive and was like a miniature man. He was like Morgan Freeman from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, basically, Sir Haroon. He was like a level. I'm trying to remember what level he is. He's like a level 7 paladin, but he is like 2 inches tall or something.
2 inches tall. Gotcha.
Yeah. So and he has like a magic sword, and he's good at hitting. His Thaco's good, but he only does like 1 damage a time. But it is magic damage. So but it can bypass. It will bypass magic protection or whatever +1.
Probably people can overrun or trample him as well.
Yeah, exactly. But he has in 2nd edition terms, he has lay on hands, so he can heal you, and he can do damage with a magic sword. But obviously, other than that, he's not necessarily like, and he's got an aura protection, but he can't do very much else. So he's their friend.
Is his aura protection also like a couple of inches where you have to put it in your pocket?
It'd be like a foot or something. You'd have to hold him.
You'd have to you'd have to sit on your shoulder. Yeah. Okay, that's pretty funny.
But even though he's really useful in some ways, obviously he doesn't just do stuff the players want. The players are like, oh, so he's our ally now. Will he come and do this? And I was like, no, because it's not a paladin's quest. And they're like, but he's 2 inches tall. He should just come and do what we want. I was like, nope, he is a paladin. He will do what he wants. So, and he's like hanging out with this retired, like war-wounded Purple Knight of Cormyr, who's one of their patrons. And I'm like, yeah, he's just going to go and live with Sir Istivar now, because like he's not going to just
Speaking of, so I do have to be at the office tomorrow, so that involves quite a trip. So the question is, can we do the last, like the John question?
John, John has 3 questions, but we can sum them up. We can probably get through fairly quickly. One is, why is system neutral systems or whatever, system neutral adventures bad, both for mechanical and cultural reasons? Why are system neutral adventures? You review even more adventures than I do, so especially system neutral adventures. I expect.
The darling, I was recommended Dark of Hot Springs Island as an example.
Yes, you decently reviewed this, didn't you? Yeah.
System neutral adventure, and I did not concur. I thought it was actually pretty hard to use. Also, kind of bad. So this is it's a good question because it's a complex question. I guess so. This sort of trend, this love for system neutral stuff, kind of came about in the, I want to say, like the mid OSR, when
I would think it was still in the G+ era. So by early to mid 10s, early to mid 10s.
Yeah, and they've been around for a while now, like to sort of to indicate like a progression. And well, what you got is a sort of I guess kind of like a type of like infectious idealism of like the interchangeability of systems, right? That the idea is in the beginning, it's all the same game. You can, and there's a limited degree of truth to it, right? You can go from BX to 1E, or from OE. You can port things to 1E or this others, right? It's all the same game. That was like the ethos back in the day. And this kind of culminates in a sort of absurdity where they're like, literally, like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, okay, let's just do a systemless game, and we'll just describe ogres and it'll be fine. They'll figure it out. And this, I think, is way too far. Every from a mechanical standpoint, I would say every edition of D&D has its own assumptions kind of built in. And while it's true that you can fairly effortlessly port adventures between different systems, of like, from 1E to OE or to BX, because differences aren't that pronounced, as the sort of level ranges go up, you're going to see lots of differences in assumptions, in performance, in like the type of spells that they have. All this stuff, all these tiny differences, I feel kind of like accumulate. All this complexity accumulates as you get farther and farther in, and it doesn't mean that it's impossible to port between 2 different systems, because if they're very similar, but it does mean that you'll need to do more conversion work, and there are things that you kind of need to take into account. And with system neutral, it's just you aren't. First of all, when you're writing a system neutral adventure, you're designing it with, usually the answer is you're designing it with no mechanics in mind whatsoever. You just have this naive kind of idea of like, I can turn my idea into a game, and I don't have to do that myself. If I just give you the general outline, the mechanics, bitch, you can do it for me. And I just think it's I'm sure you can come up with an example where it would maybe work, but I just feel in practice this is you're cruising for a bruising. This idea is crazy. You can't have you're designing an adventure location for a game, but you're saying, well, there's no rules. It's for every game. That's absurd.
I think also you're almost being generous in a way in assuming that people were assuming they were actually designing something for a game. I think eventually you reach a cultural point where people aren't designing to be played anyway. These are just artifacts to enjoy. And I think that probably does relate somewhat to the presentation of Hot Springs Island, which does connect to John's second question. But this idea that in the end, like, this is just nice, isn't it? It's very pretty, and people enjoy pretty things. I think that's part of what happened with the system neutral thing. Think about something like Thousand Islands is one of the best RPG artists going, to be clear, Monkau. Like, oh, what happens if we get, this guy has amazing art, what happens if we put some kind of creative stuff next to it, and maybe a few random tables, and you end up with something which we've talked about this before on the channel and off the channel, but you can do something with that. But you realize eventually it's a guy who is a genuinely great RPG adjacent artist, genuinely great. Monkau, highly recommend his work. But the point is that you could kind of just look at Arthurian art from the Middle Ages and read Chrétien, and you'd only be half a step backwards in terms of how close you were to a game. So the problem there is that just seems like, really, this is mostly based on, here's a guy whose art would be great in an RPG book, but we're not actually going to write an RPG to accompany it. We're just going to write kind of interesting material.
I feel it's more defensible if you're less specific. I can see, actually, now that I think about it, like, I can see people writing a system neutral campaign setting, right? I still don't recommend it, but I can see that actually working a little bit better. With an adventure, it's trash. You're going to, that's like the most,
well, it's because the adventure has to be usable. It has to be something to do. Yeah. Well, it's also by campaign setting, almost what you mean. You always feel like if someone said, here is a 10-page campaign setting in like the 2-column 8-point or 6, so it's quite detailed. Like it's quite compressed, but it has loads of stuff about the politics. It has loads of stuff about the high level, the stuff you might get involved in, loads of locations. Here's a dragon, here's this. That is something where you're like, okay, actually, this is enough to kind of really, and here's some other ideas, and here's some possibilities over the course of the campaign. People aren't going to be offended by that, even if it's not immediately usable. It's useful for something, and it's not offensive. Whereas when it's like, here's a dungeon, but we're not going to tell you how anything works. We're not going to tell you how anything works in the dungeon. And the dungeon is the place where stuff has to be mechanized precisely. A big thing, by the way, that's an important thing. Is that
it's the most discrete way you can.
Exactly.
The most
so the fact you're writing a dungeon with no rules.
Adventure,
I think it'd be interesting to think about more. But an example that's come up recently in my mind, because I reviewed B5 Horror on the Hill recently, which you like, I like. Douglas Niles, probably best work. There's an interesting thing where I was reflecting on the dangers of a red dragon at the end of that adventure, and how a BX group of that kind of level might be able to negotiate, run away. And it's fun. He's like, if they subdue the dragon, this happens. It's well written, but I was like, man, that's a really tough challenge, but maybe they could do it this way. And I had some people respond, by the way, saying our experience with the red dragon was this, which was cool. But I was thinking it would also work differently depending on the edition you're in. Are you in BX with BX PCs and BX dragons? Are you in 1E with 1E dragons and 1E characters who are more effective and useful than BX?
Yeah, but the breath weapon is worse.
But BX at first level though, some of the stuff in AD&D is better at first level, like clerics. So if you're up to 3rd level, which you can be in that adventure, then your AD&D character is just going to be more effective, I would have thought, generally speaking. But in 2E, where the dragons are more powerful, because dragons and giants get
I
was thinking,
but that's a system neutral. That's a good example.
If you get to that system neutral one.
That's a good example. My example of choice is usually I think it's B7 Rahaja or something, where the entire most of the opponents in the adventure are like charmed elves, which if you would switch the assumptions of the system from BX to 1E, first of all, so the idea is the elves are charmed and they're normally like lawful aligned, they're good aligned, so killing them will actually get you negative XP. And in BX you would just be able to like take them out with like maybe sleep, or again maybe you could override the charm with your own charm. But in 1E, first of all, you get a sort of epistemological problem, because the elves are charmed, but elves are immune to charm, or 90% immune. But also you can't cast sleep on them, right? Suddenly, this minor change in system, these two assumptions kind of like have altered the scenario. So now it's harder. Like certain assumptions are no longer hold up, and it's a very simple example. But this is just to illustrate a point, right?
Yeah, and you can say, oh, but I can fix that, and that is absolutely true, and that's what being a DM running and adapting adventures is about, working out, oh, I like the adventure, but this doesn't work, so I have to fix it. But the point is, if you then say, no, that's the whole way adventures can be or should be designed as system neutral, well, you're reducing your utility, not increasing it, because you're not designing for anyone or any system. You're not designing for a thing that can happen. You're designing for the idea of someone reading your adventure, someone paying you $3 on drive-through RPG, basically, is what you're designing for.
I made another point in my review of Dark of Hot Springs Island, is that it's usually much better to just to design for one system, so we know the assumptions, and then converting it is relatively simple, right? It's like a linear transformation. But if you don't write it for anything, then if you put a lot of like
how tough is the Red Dragon? So B5, imagine B5 is system neutral. How tough is the dragon meant to be? At the end, that example, right? How tough is the dragon?
Yeah,
is it this tough or this tough?
What a red dragon is, right? But what if it's a Lurgoyf or something like that? It's like somebody made up some sort of. I made that point too in my review. Somebody made up some kind of monster. Okay, how strong is this monster in relation to other monsters, right? Like where is it on the totem pole? And then you can only like vaguely assert. Whereas if you give it a stat block of a system, then you communicate all this stuff.
Oh yeah. As I say, part of the reason people don't is actually because they don't play games, they don't want to play games, and they don't intend you to play the games. So that is as a cultural thing, it encourages no gameism, and it's partly a result of no gameism, to answer that point to John's. His second question on the note of Hot Springs. In-universe artifacts like the player-facing book for Hot Springs seem very cool. How can they be made to work? I don't know. There's a piece of string element there that obviously depends on the product. But yeah, I do think stuff that players to have is fun. Like players enjoy it. Like they like having maps. They like having in-universe texts that are not actual books, but are kind of cool bits where they're like, oh yes, this is this. Like that is my experience. The players do enjoy that, and certainly a physical artifact like that could be fun in an in-person campaign. But yeah, I guess
then the cynical answer would be that by tying it to a if you make sure that the back end is also good, because we already know it works, right? Like people are sort of like you're playing with their anticipation, I guess, and you're also pushing them to like seek things out. It's a really neat idea. I'm kind of bummed out I didn't have the time to cover it in my Hot Springs Island review, but my Hot Springs Island review was already like way too fucking long.
Yeah, and you were talking about the adventure rather than the conceptual material that came with the adventure. Yeah, but no, I do think that idea
the kicker, to sell it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say the simple example. I've already given half of this, but say I talked earlier about my Dagford campaign and the idea that there's like, we have a list of rumors, seasonal table of rumors and jobs. For each sub-region. Now there are 2 sub-regions they're active in, and that is not a particularly exciting or glamorous one, so obviously a cool book is better, but the idea that you just put information in front of your players is itself always, as long as it's not overwhelming, fun. Players are like, and as long as it connects your backing point, as long as it connects to something in the world they can do. If you're just like, if the rumors are pointless rumors, or if the maps are pointless maps, or whatever it is, then that it doesn't matter how beautiful they are or how basic they are. Whereas if you have something useful, then obviously the better the map you have. This is the thing where you're like, oh yes, and in our game, our DM created all these things for us, and they're really beautiful because he's a great artist, and they were really relevant in the game. And you hear this amazing story, and you're like, yep, that's great. So I think really, it's about it being useful in the game, and then once it's useful in the game, you can improve the quality of presentation of it, all the way up to having an actual physical book, if you like. But it starts probably from that usability side of being directly connected to the game.
I guess there's also something to be said for just again, it's the anticipation that you kind of build. But yeah, of course, it needs to like I agree with that. It needs to like pay off and be related to what will follow. But it's like an extra. It's like a really strong hook, right? That you give. It kind of like wettens the appetite. And I guess there's probably some sort of tactile kind of like benefit to it as well. But yeah, that would be my answer.
Yeah, I was going to say maps being physical map. If you can have handouts for maps, that's a separately good thing, I think.
X marks the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like for Mithril, it has the kind of the cardboard, like thin cardboard map, which we use when we play in person. For Greyhawk, like obviously I get out the Greyhawk box set maps, like this is where this is, this is where this is, these are your options for what you can do. You know, like it helps having the physical maps in front of you, and that art, and there is a tactility spreading out. It's pleasurable, but also it's that itself, I think, helps trigger your interaction with it. John's final question was, DMs are often disappointed players miss clues and underlying connections within content they create or run. Is this just DMs refusing to accept that a lot will be missed no matter what? Is this the person who knows the riddle thinks it's trivial effect? And should patterns be made more obvious in that case? Do people generally run too short of content for interesting hidden structure to surface in play? It works in Ardenville, but not in 40 rooms. So I think it's about the kind of the thing where DMs often like the idea of having Kunzian depth, we call it. Like things that you have to kind of investigate lots of and get lots of clues for and work out. But players do not always, or often do not at all, engage or understand that. And it's something, it is a regular complaint you hear, not so much necessarily amongst our friends, but you know, it's a classic r/D&D, r/RPG thing of my players have not understood anything that's happened in the game. And of course, at some level, the answer is, oh, it's a skill issue. But yes, I guess John's particular question is, how far is that? Do you need a big environment for that to work? Do you need a big campaign for that to work? How far is it that you should make the clues really obvious? You know, what do you think? What's the place of that in the game, and how should it work?
Oh, first, you should accept that like people will miss stuff, and in fact, them missing it is what makes it like significant, I guess. So that when they do find it, it has genuine sort of like meaning. There's nothing I feel that sort of like totally dissipates my excitement as if when I see that the DM is actually telegraphing it too hard and I get handed my mystery. That's fucking lame. However, doing something and the DM is only maybe like given a very reluctant, sly hint, and then you find it, and it's like, I don't know, you finally find this big treasure hoard, and there's no guarantees, but you find it all of your own. That kind of gives as a player, it gives a big rush, but that rush can only exist if it's like sort of like real. So it is your lot. I would say that a lot of it will be missed no matter what. You of course have the option of reusing it elsewhere, although there might be some sort of existential problem related with that, and maybe like light illusionism or something like that, but probably won't notice. Should patterns be made more obvious? I think that relates to the answer to that can be what do you call that? Can be taken from the former of what I just said, and interesting hidden surfaces to structuring play. I do think probably that like having very large sort of structures that take very many sessions to explore. The chance of like these sort of effects mattering or coming to the forefront, or players getting invested in the place that they go through, as more than just like a set of random rooms be populated with obstacles that are between them and like the XP that they will earn. Probably having a very large place will be more conducive to that, because you can make, I guess, even like a lot of background details to it that are often intertwined with these riddles. This kind of needs, I feel this needs room to breathe. You can write a complicated history of your 5-room dungeon. It's not going to fucking matter. They're going to go, in and out, bam, bam, bam. They're not going to wonder about like some
there is a degree as well. I'm thinking in terms of the examples you've given, one thing is also, it depends what the point or area of the mystery or what is being gated is. If you're like, the first door in the dungeon has a 17-part puzzle attached to it, and it involves deep knowledge of chess and also of particle physics, then yeah, of course it's going to suck and the players aren't going to get all of it, and you're going to be annoyed because the adventure stops. So some of it is about what is being gated and how, I think. I think there's so. Yeah, and I think sometimes it also depends how well you know your players. Obviously, some of this, something you create that flies in your campaign because your players may translate poorly in something published, which is not quite what we're talking about. But obviously, he's talking about published stuff as well, I guess, implicitly.
Can I?
Because a different group just has a different knowledge base. Go for it.
can I reference? It doesn't translate perfectly, but I found it translates pretty well, or at least in certain lessons. But an analogy I believe is like secrets in Doom, and I mean the first Doom specifically, right? The first person shooter from the 1980s. What they do there, or what the best designer, one of the best map designers ever, John Romero, what he does really well is if there's a secret in the area, which is usually some sort of power up or something, he actually telegraphs the secret reasonably well. He puts the power up in a highly visible location. It's just that there's no obvious way to get there, and that kind of like gets people like, oh, they're going to start like scouring around looking for textures that are off, or they're going to look at the map like, where could it be? Where could it approximately be? And it sort of triggers that searching instinct. And there's actually Gabor Lux in, I believe it's the Adventure Strabonus, does something similar, where one of the very first rooms has like an inverted glass pyramid of impenetrable glass, right, in the ceiling, and it's filled with treasure. So you're in one of the first rooms. You see the major hoard at the end of the dungeon. You can already see it, but you can't fucking touch it. And that kind of like gets you like, that's a really great hook. It's a really great way to sort of like, I think it's even a hidden hoard as well. But it's to sort of like clue people in that something like that is going on. I think mastering that skill of like how to sort of telegraph that there's a secret without, giving a secret away. I think
Do you know
that's a vital skill to
dungeon
have.
that does this well, that you like and I like? I've run. I don't think you've run. Sword Thrust, the Titan's Crown from Roll 8,
Okay.
RA 719 or whatever it is. Sword Thrust is great. My players, I did not spoon feed them. I didn't particularly push them towards this. They started, and they didn't. Some of the stuff to do with spoiler. That essentially it is literally the head of a Titan, a sleeping Titan, and the weird battle between good and evil going on inside it is his lesson, his great, his demons and his angels, and you can help one side or the other, and you can also wake him up. These two things are relevant, and there's a bunch of stuff like that that's fun. But they didn't work out all of that, but there were definitely bits where they're like, because there's people talking about this, and because of all the weird stuff that's happening, I think we're inside a dreaming mind of this figure that, we've heard a mention about a Titan. The Titan's Crown, maybe we're literally in the dreams of a Titan, and you're like, yeah, that's correct. But that happened over.
You get all these bizarre allegorical encounters.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a medium-sized adventure. I think it's like 50 or 60 rooms or something. And yeah, there's enough space to find that out, but it's not so complicated, nor does it matter. You do not need to know it, except in the specific case you decide to wear all the armor and sit on the throne, at which point you wake him up and you die. But like you're like, oh, in that case, that which is a Broodmother Sky Fortress kind of level of campaign change stuff. But the point is, unless you do that, but yeah, there's stuff like that. They're like, yeah, we should separate the armor. Probably no one person should have it. Also, we shouldn't give it all to Morlian, this guy who's hired us, because he doesn't seem like a great guy. So essentially, like, we'll give him a bunch of pieces of armor and lie about the rest. So you're like, the players have picked up the different things. They found out the clues about Morlian having sent previous parties to the Titan's Crown. They've worked out some stuff about what's going on in the Titan's Crown. They actually have a long-term allies adventuring with them currently in the Gloaming, while trying to find Baba Yaga's hut. The centaur from that, he's like, punch me, and he's like, wants you to punch him until he becomes more real, basically. And that meant he could escape the Titan's Crown and go with them and be their friend. So yeah, they have Canaris, the centaur, goes with them everywhere. Not everywhere. Anywhere there's a fight. He is a much easier ally than Sir Haroon, because he's like, yes, there's a fight, good. Whereas Sir Haroon is like, is it a paladin's quest? But yeah, like, I think that's a scenario that does well with that gimmick, even though it's not perfect, and even though there are flaws with the adventure, it's big enough, and the thing you're trying to find out, it's not like if you don't work it all out, you fail. It's more like, this is useful if you work out more and more of it. It's nice if you work out more and more of it.
True, although of course, Kantian depth can never. Well, I guess it can actually be used to like gate part of the adventure behind it, but then that's not very well done. Yeah, usually it's just something. I guess a little bit of extra content, kind of like being obscure and locked away, is kind of cool. I kind of wanted to do that for Slith Hive as well. That's one of my ideas was to in one of like the very lowest levels, there's like a sort of like doorway, and if you of a you know, a temple, a tiny temple to a god of like annihilation, and in the center of the main chamber, there's like this this doorway of sort of like shadow, and if you walk through it, then it works as a sphere of annihilation, right? You're totally destroyed. But then there's like a reference elsewhere, which is fairly hard to find. That if you have I think it's like like you need one other specific item, like an elder sign, and if you have that, you know, you walk through it, you can, you know, reach sort of like the home of the gods. And I kind of want to, you know, if I'm gonna expand it, I want something like that, where you have some
So
obscure
yeah, I
secret
think that
level,
is
you can only
one way
find
that you can do that. I think there's also, here's an example, and I'd say this is one where you need stuff to be a bit clearer and a bit more open, is and not necessarily easy or super open, but a bit clearer. So yeah, I like that. But that's very much the bonus content, the side level. You know, that's the Mario side level, right?
Yeah, where it's okay that most people will never find it. That's
exactly.
actually cool.
It's a bonus. It's a bonus. But I think an example where you want it to be slightly easier to understand the problem, even if you still have to do things to solve it, is, let's say you find a great, you know, halfway through the dungeon, and Temple of Elemental Evil does this a tiny bit, so it's many adventures do this. But you know, the idea, you find a great set of gates, and they need, let's pretend they need 2 keys, but you don't have the keys, so you have to go and find the keys. You have to go and work to find the keys to open the great gate. That's the kind of thing where the objective is really clear, isn't it? You know what you're meant to be doing.
Correct.
And you can have the other stuff have some puzzles and stuff on the way to get them, the keys. But the point is, you need to be able to be very clear about what the thing you need to do is, and then have challenges that are within the game, not like abstract crazy stuff, but stuff the players can do to get them.
Let's take one of the most, like the one classic examples, right? Temple of Tharizdun, where it's actually pretty easy to miss a lot of it after you're done, you know, slaughtering all of the humanoids. It's just
in that case, that's a hybrid case, though, isn't it? Is that it is a bit like, here is a bit of you're moderately high level, but also this is a bit of a bonus. You don't have to get to the very deepest parts. You know, like that's a bit of a hybrid between the two cases, isn't it? Of, it's not quite bonus content, but nor is it absolutely like, yes, the main point of it is to do this. It's more like, that is a cool, you know, that's where you want to go. But if the players don't, then fair enough. That's just
yeah, it's not that the adventure is a boring piece of shit if you don't find it. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I will say that one relies really on your if you've been a good like father to the players, sorry, a good DM, right? If you've treated them nicely, right? If you have been diligent in your design, where they understand that, like, that the dungeons, that there is sort of like there's an underlying order to it, and hard work pays off, right? That he wouldn't just send you to a random shithole. If that happens, then they might have some instinct of like, wait, this can't be all of it, right? And that little instinct has to prompt them to start looking, and then if they're persistent enough, they can find it. But they'll only do that if they haven't been, you know, traumatized.
That's an interesting point. Some of this is about culture. This kind of goes back to John's point about what culture the system neutral things create. It's not the same question, but the idea of the culture of a table. If your players trust you and think stuff is going to be plausible, you can achieve it, it is interesting. Also, it is dangerous. It is hard. You know, you don't just get stuff for free. Those are both good things to teach. And it's not, that's not a kind of conditioning to make them do some linear stuff. It is a bit like teaching your actual kids decision making, to use your metaphor there. You know, you're like, no, yeah, the world is actually like this. You're teaching the game state of the world in the game. And if you teach that well, if the players understand what you're going for, and if you have a healthy concept of that classic adventure game world, then I think the players will then be like, great, let's push on, let's try to find something, let's keep persevering. You know, whereas, yeah, you're right, if they're like, oh yeah, nothing is interesting in this world anyway, they'll just leave, won't they? They'll be like, yeah, I guess we'll do something else.
We've gone through the door, like we've gone through the room, we've spent 5 minutes, let's move on, there's nothing here, next one, right? It really, you need to run in a certain way.
Cool. Well, those were our questions for today. I was thinking if I had, because in terms of campaign catch-up stuff, what else do we have? Soon we will be starting, it's indefinite exactly when, but we'll be playing Birthright on the channel. That is a thing on the note of campaign stuff. We'll be doing Birthright.
Oh, sounds exciting.
It'll be fun. Mixture of domain campaign play and normal adventuring. I was thinking, yeah, and it is fun with Greyhawk. It is fun that after many other adventures, they're back at the Temple of Elemental Evil. And have been purging some bandits and have other things to go and adventure and explore. Temple is a fun module. I like it. I think it's underrated by reputation. Obviously, it can be overrated by being like, oh, it's Gary Gygax's masterpiece that he published. And it's not. It's kind of a weird, it's Frank Menser expanding Gary's work, sometimes not successfully. But like, it is a genuinely really interesting module with a lot of good stuff in it, but it just also needs a bit of
ditch the nodes is what I've heard as a tip.
Look, you can also look at there are some fan versions of the nodes. You can also look at Joseph Block, Greyhawk Gronyard has done a bunch of expansion modules for a couple for the T module.
Right.
So I'd recommend looking at that as well to be like, oh, here's other. So he adds 2 more overland bandit bases, for instance, as well as the moat house. He's like, hey, the bandits are everywhere and you can engage them in different places, and there's it creates more level 1 content basically, rather than the moat house is really second level. But yeah, great. Next time I guess we'll be doing a review. Should we review a Gabor Lux product next time?
Yes, that doesn't sound like a bad idea. Let's do that.
Yeah, we will return. We will return to Bradco in a few sessions time, but I think we said next time we should do a Gabor thing.
Oh, you're right. We were gonna do a the full Wyvern
song.
We'll
do another Wyvern song sometime soon. Yes.
Oh, no.
But next time we'll do Gabor. I don't know what we'll do the time afterwards, but yeah, next time we'll do a Gabor Lux adventure. Friend of the channel, but someone we've also we have bought our products from him. We have paid our monies and we've taken our chances. So yeah, that'll be good. Okay then. Well, we'll leave that there for today then, I suppose, and we will catch people in about a month.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot,
everyone.
Owen. Good night, everyone.
Good night.